desse webinar. E estamos aqui dando início, né, a esse primeiro webinar. Vocês viram na mensagem que enviamos para vocês que temos uma programação já para hoje, começando às 11 horas agora, com uma pequena fala da Sônia sobre o projeto Dataverse de Harvard, em seguida por a parte a gestão das políticas e das colaborações que tem também no repositório da Dataverse de Harvard. Assim, terminando isso, vamos abrir para perguntas e respostas. Será interessante ouvir todas as dúvidas que vocês possam ter. Temos já algumas informações sobre as pessoas que estão aqui, a quem está interessado em alguns aspectos, né? Quem são pesquisadores, ou bibliotecários, ou gestores do repositório, mas nós estamos interessados em ouvir a todos para saber qual é a impressão também que se tem do uso do Dataverse aqui no Brasil. Sim? Já depois teremos um pequeno break, né? Para lunch, para almoço, de mais ou menos 30, 40 minutos, para voltar com uma apresentação muito especial que vai ser feita por convidados também de nossa colega Sônia. Eles vão falar bastante sobre as coisas que têm a ver com a integração do Dataverse. E antes disso, temos também uma visão geral dos Dataverse no Brasil. Sim? Alguns de vocês responderam aquela última mensagem com as planilhas, sim? Que a gente vai agora aqui analisar também e tentar preencher como um exercício com vocês também, ok? Então, temos bastante coisa para hoje, esperamos contar com vocês e, por favor, enviem suas perguntas ou suas dúvidas também pelo chat ou pelo botão que está embaixo, que é sobre perguntas, sim? Perguntas, e aí também nós vamos a responder, ok? Então, estamos esperando mais pessoas, ainda não entraram, mas temos um horário, né, a preencher. Não sei, Sônia, bom, desafortunadamente, o dia de hoje não contaremos com tradução simultânea, só conseguimos para o mês de abril e para o mês de maio, mas nesse momento, eu acho que vocês já têm mais ou menos a ideia do que vai ser falado hoje, e vamos tentar ajudar também com a tradução das slides, para vocês também acompanharem, ok? Então, Sônia, I don't know if you want to say something to people.
Sure. Thank you very much for attending today. I'm very glad that we're getting this opportunity to talk to your group again. We value the installations in Brazil and the collaborations that we hope to continue into the future with you guys, helping to make sure that your repositories are working as you want them to work, and that they're working well for your users and for your community. So as Miguel mentioned, today I'm going to share a bit about the Harvard Dataverse management and policies. And I'm going to talk about all of the collaborations that we do around preservation, supporting data with the library, with our support systems at Harvard, to give you an idea of, you know, maybe something that you can also put in place in your own universities, your own institutions, to really help you build a strong foundation for data support. We'll also be talking, going through all of the Brazilian installations, I hope, with this spreadsheet that we have that will basically cover everything available to you in a Dataverse installation. What you're using, what you're not using, are there questions about features that you need answered in order to help you use it better with your team, all to, you know, move the data towards FAIR. And we also have a nice presentation on the integration between our space and the DMP tool, which will help you with the management of data management plans. Okay, so I'm glad to see everybody here. We're going to start in about 4 minutes. I'm going to give it till 9:10 just for people to show up. And then we're going to start with the presentation on the Dataverse, a very brief introduction to the Dataverse software, because all of you are familiar with it, but really go in depth into what the Harvard University or the Harvard Dataverse Repository is doing. Okay, so welcome everyone. Again, use the Q&A at the bottom of the page, or you can write your questions in chat. And you can write in English or Portuguese. Miguel will translate anything that needs to be translated for me. And happy to have you all here today. Okay, thank you.
Então, thank you, Sônia. Talvez o que podemos começar é testando essa opção, por favor. Se vocês puderem colocar seu nome na parte de questions and answers, sim, por favor, só para saber que vocês estão presentes. Sim, aqui na opção aqui embaixo do painel, da tela, está questions and answers. Sim? Se você puder colocar seu nome, por favor, é isso. Aqui já temos a Sônia, Sônia Boeres, não Sônia Barbosa, está aqui conosco. Também, quem mais está por aqui? Daniela Feijó, da Unicamp, Marcelo Mundi, também, Fátima Martins, da Fiocruz, também está com a gente. Quem mais? Por favor. Vamos ver quem mais está. Acho que entrou Érica Mansur, da Unicamp. Sim. Não sei se estou vendo todo mundo, mas acho que sim. A Kate da Unicamp também. Kate Duarte também está com a gente. São universidades brasileiras, a maioria delas. Temos também a Fiocruz, né, que é uma fundação da área de saúde, também está com a gente. Sim. Alguém mais? É uma forma de apresentação, tá? Para a gente, para a Sônia saber quem está com a gente hoje, sim? Por favor. Temos a Alessandra Karine Neves, da Unicamp, a Vanessa Jorge, da Fiocruz, também. I feel like in a radio program. Okay. Broadcast. Vanessa Jorge, Alessandra Ken, Kate, Maria de Fátima, Marcelo Mundim Rodrigues, Érica Cristina Carvalho Mansur, Sônia Boeres e Daniela Simões. Bom, vamos esperar mais um pouquinho. Alguém mais quer se manifestar aqui nas perguntas e respostas, por favor? Sim? Seria bom para ter o nome de vocês com a gente aqui. Bom, estamos dando mais um minuto para dar início já à nossa programação de hoje. Ela já está organizada, né, de certa forma, mas queremos muito ouvir vocês e queremos muito saber se tem algum tema, algum assunto que vocês têm muita necessidade de que seja respondido, mas por termos essa facilidade, né, de poder conversar com Sônia, que conhece quase todas, eu acho, imagino todas as instalações do Dataverse no mundo. Então, por favor, aproveitem o máximo que puderem o dia de hoje. Sim? Bom, então temos mais alguém que se anotou aqui? Não estou vendo.
It's been nobody has come in for a little while, so I'm going to go ahead and start. Is that
Perfect.
okay?
Okay.
All righty.
Okay. Então, por favor, as perguntas podem continuar sendo feitas pelo question and answers, ok? Por favor, Sônia.
Okay.
Please, Sônia.
All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Cariniana and Dataverse webinar series for 2022. This is our first webinar of 3 in this series. And Miguel, you can see my screen well, no problem?
Yes, everything's fine.
Okay, perfect. So everybody will, I will share this presentation with Miguel with my speaker notes after the webinar. And so you will have a record of everything that we talk about today. And the series is also being recorded. So you will have a translation of the recording that Miguel will take care of on his end. We hope that for a series number 2 and 3, that we will have a translator available during the webinar. So today's agenda, as I mentioned, is a brief introduction to the Dataverse project, because all of you are very familiar with the Dataverse project already. I'm just going to cover the couple of basic slides on the Dataverse project, how it started. But I'm going to mainly be talking about the Harvard Dataverse Repository, the management, the policies, and the collaborations. We will have an interactive overview of the Brazilian Dataverse repositories, and we're going to work through that tool together. So it's a very comprehensive spreadsheet that we're going to have to enter some information on, and then that will help us build future webinars around questions that come up from that spreadsheet. And then we have a very special presentation on RSpace and DMP tool integration into Dataverse. That will be done at the end of the day. And we also have some breaks in here for lunch and bathroom breaks and questions and chatting. So we will keep you informed on all of that. And so that we just have some time to recoup and gather our thoughts during this meeting. Okay, so the Dataverse project, right? Which everybody in this meeting now knows about and has been using in one way or another for a little while. So the central goal of the Dataverse project is basically to automate much of the job of the professional archivist. And it's there to provide services for and to distribute credit to the data creator. So before the Dataverse project, researchers were sometimes forced to choose between receiving credit for their data by controlling distribution themselves, but then you know what that means, that there was likely no long-term preservation guarantees because data was being stored on laptops, on computers, in desk drawers. So they could do this controlling of the distribution of the data themselves, or they could have long-term preservation guarantees by sending it to a professional archive, but then there was the possibility of not receiving credit or proper credit for their work, okay? So today we have a number of Dataverse installations, 77 to be exact, with a lot more coming that are in the process of being released. And all of these installations have their own rules, their own user communities, who they serve, how they serve it, and what tools they make available, okay? So here is the basic screenshot that everybody's knows about Dataverse, right? Open source research data repository. It allows researchers to share their work and get their citation. It allows journals to have their authors submit data to one collection, which is hosted by an installation. So a majority of the hosting and the preservation and the curation is done by the installation that's hosting the journal. It allows controlled workflows for journals. Institutions can also use it as a solution for their community to share data. And of course, we have a really large community of developers that help to build integrated tools, visualization, exploration tools for Dataverse. So all of us have used Dataverse or supported these user communities in one way or another at this point. You're either sharing data in one or you're hosting data, and you are helping to your user community to make use of the installation in your community. So you know that the source code is on GitHub, it's open source, and you know that the Dataverse software provides the ability to move your data sharing towards FAIR. So I created this little relationship just for now to, show what it looks like. What does the Dataverse project look like? So right now, the project, of course, is tracked at IQSS. That is where the project originated at Harvard at the Institute for Quantitative Social Science. So the dataverse.org project website will show you the map of 77 installations. One of those installations, as you can see, is the Harvard Dataverse Repository. And the Harvard Dataverse Repository is an endowed permanent repository. And I will tell you how it became an endowed permanent repository. It's always been an endowed permanent repository, but very few people are aware that it's actually an endowed repository. The Dataverse project itself, as you know, is at the Institute for Quantitative Social Science. It's supported by a community of coders, researchers, and developers. And there's the Global Dataverse Consortium, which everybody should be familiar with now, which is making sure that those communities that want to have an installation have the support to have an installation. It also makes sure that financially institutions can afford to have a Dataverse installation and provide DOIs and get the curation service and the community support that they need. So we will be talking now about the Harvard Dataverse Repository as a generalist repository, which is open to the worldwide research community, okay? Here's the map. Apologies. Here is the map of the Dataverse installations around the world that we are now at 77. And I know that there are a few on this map because they've contacted us that they are ready to be added to our map as part of the data sharing community. And of course, I always highlight that, you know, we have quite a few installations in Brazil, and we can't wait to see more come out of your community. So the Harvard Dataverse Repository, it is Harvard's endowed repository. What that means is that we have an endowment that actually started around 2005. And it started in 2005 because we have an archive called the Henry A. Murray Research Archive, which I manage. That archive was part of Radcliffe College. And for those of you who are not familiar, Radcliffe College was the women's college at Harvard University. So at one point, as you know, Harvard University was not open to women to attend. So they had Radcliffe College was the portion of Harvard University where women could take classes. In 1976, Henry A. Murray, who was a psychiatrist, psychologist at Harvard University, through the Ford Foundation opened and started the Henry A. Murray Research Archive at Radcliffe College. This archive was an archive that supports longitudinal data, mostly based on women's lives. Well, that archive came with an endowment. So in the late 1990s, there was a reorganization of Harvard University, Radcliffe College, and Radcliffe College became the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study at Harvard University. And during that transition, the Henry Murray Archive became part of the Institute for Quantitative Social Science. So it moved from Radcliffe College to the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study, and then it came over to the Institute for Quantitative Social Science, bringing with it the endowment that it had to function. That endowment became the support for the Harvard Dataverse Repository. So it doesn't necessarily, it supports part of the Dataverse software, but it supports the repository, which is why we're able to make it open to the worldwide research community, along, of course, with the collaborations with the library and Harvard University IT. So that's just a little backstory on how we're able to provide as many services as we offer. So this is the Harvard Dataverse support website, and you'll see that we have curation services and our policies and governance. So at one point when you visited the Harvard Dataverse, you would literally just have the page for the dataverse.org. But over the past few years, we've developed a page that talks about particularly the Harvard Dataverse Repository and what we support and what our policies are separate from the Dataverse software, because people would think it was the same thing, and it wasn't the same thing. So here's the Henry Murray Archive that I told you about, where the endowment exists. So I manage the collection of the Henry Murray Archive. I started working there in 1995, and my job was to bring in data with diverse samples. So data on race, data on religion, data on sexuality, and to increase that holding for data at risk. And then this archive was brought over to IQSS, and we still manage the collection as part of the Harvard Dataverse. And so that endowment is what supports the Harvard Dataverse repository. So to tell you a little bit about the repository, as most of you know, we are open to the worldwide research community for self-curated data sharing, and we opened in 2006. But we had been testing the Dataverse software in its former name. It was called the Virtual Data Center. And we were testing it with the data from the Henry Murray Archive that I just talked about. That data were sensitive data, qualitative data, numeric data, and we were testing in the late 1990s a platform for sharing that kind of data. And so it was the Virtual Data Center at that time. And then in 2005, it became the Harvard, the Dataverse software. And we didn't open it as open access until 2006, then where people could take the software and install it and create their own repositories for sharing data. So the Harvard Dataverse repository is supported by a staff of 4 curation professionals. And then we have the IQSS development team, UX UI design that works for not only the Dataverse software, but the Harvard Dataverse repository. And we do this in collaboration with the Harvard Library and the Harvard University IT. We offer paid curation services, and this is currently our holding of published and unpublished content, the number of published and unpublished content in our in the repository. So, you know, it's not clear to a lot of people that the Harvard Dataverse software is actually managed. People think that because it's self-curated that anybody can come in and drop content and there's no review process, there's nothing, that it's just open, which is far from the truth. So again, we have our support website. These are the things that we support for the Harvard Dataverse. Custom terms for created collections. We have the paid curation services. So you will come across a lot of collections in our repository that are managed by us or managed with our assistants. So although it is self-curated by the majority of collections, a lot of the large collections work very closely in collaboration with my team to share their data. Per collection limitations on the Harvard Dataverse is 1 terabyte. We do offer paid support for data that are over 1 terabyte. First, services are given to Harvard University affiliates, and then we consider projects that are not Harvard affiliated. But if people are able to pay to support large data, then we're able to provide that support for them. There's no sensitive data support at that time, but that is in the works now with data tags and OpenDP or differential privacy, which I will talk about later in this presentation. All of the authors that use the Harvard Dataverse retain copyright to their data. The only thing we do is provide the service. We allow customizable license for sharing the data. We provide custom metadata block support for collections that come in and need a metadata block that is not currently part of the software infrastructure. There's the private URL for data sharing, which we promote. We support a draft and publish workflow controlled by the administrators of collection or a data set depositor. So we do not do the publishing on behalf of anyone. Our user community can publish and share their own deposits. A number of our journals and organizations use a submit for review controlled workflow. We do not do that for the main repository. That's what makes it self-curated, is the ability for the user community to come in, create their data set, create their collection, and manage their own content and publish their own content. We are using CodeOcean and Hotel to support reproducibility verification. We have a couple of collections that work directly with CodeOcean to do reproducibility verification, and then CodeOcean deposits the content back into the Harvard Dataverse Repository. We support the file previewer tool, which was created by the Qualitative Data Repository, or QDR. We also support Data Explorer, which was created by Scholars Portal. And we just turned on our embargo feature so that manual embargoes are no longer necessary. Now you can use a file level embargo feature for your files that sets a date for when that file becomes available for use. And we will take questions at the end of the webinar, by the way. So here is some more information about the Harvard Dataverse Repository, right? We allow you to deposit a data set or a collection, okay? The per file limit is 2.5 gigabytes. Collection limit is 1 terabyte. However, based on your collection, we do allow some changes to support larger collections. So for example, the Center for Astrophysics at Harvard University, their per size file limit is 46 gigabytes. Because we know they are producing larger data, and that's the kind of support they need to bring their data into the Harvard Dataverse. So we do that on a collection level. So if it is a non-Harvard collection, that we would have to talk about costs, because the Harvard Library pays for some of that storage cost. So certain collections can come to us and ask for a larger limit on their collection space. And we do customize collection spaces to allow for that. By default, Harvard Dataverse is CC0, but users are allowed to customize their own terms and licenses as long as it does not conflict with the basic terms of use that we have for account creation and data access on the Harvard Dataverse. We allow open and restricted content. Sensitive data support is coming, but not yet, so all data need to be de-identified. And so when we say that sensitive data is not allowed, well, one of the things we do is check all of the deposits that come into the Harvard Dataverse. We have a workflow where each curator takes a week where they check all of the deposits that are coming in. And we go through these deposits and we deaccession content. We contact depositors that may have put in sensitive data to ask them to de-identify their data, and then we help them deaccession the identifiable content. And we basically make sure that what is coming into the Harvard Dataverse is content that we support. So all deposits must contain data, and then we encourage the documentation and the code to be deposited with the data. Publications can only be included within the same data set, the same DOI that has a data file. If somebody puts in only a publication with no data, it is deleted permanently and it's deleted right away. We don't contact people about that. We delete the content because the DOIs that we provide are supposed to point to data. So when someone finds those DOIs in DataSite, they are expecting to find data. So again, deposited contents are reviewed daily and weekly. We also have a quarterly, annual check query of the repository that we do for cleaning up all unpublished content that's older than 3 years. So Dataverse collections that were created but never published. If we see data that's older than 3 years, we reach out to the depositor. If they do not reply back to us within a certain amount of time, we delete the content because we cannot store content that will not be shared. So if you look at the date these are the publication years of the content that's published on the Harvard Dataverse. It starts with 2007, right? And that's just around the time that I told you we kind of made things available. I was doing, myself and my team were doing most of the curation back then, okay? We started the repository with a managed curation model for about 3 years, which makes sense why you see a lot of the publications in 2007. We had an active acquisition where we identified research projects. We had active email communication with faculty and scholars and large projects around the world. And we created and curated the content for these people that we reached out to, for these researchers. A lot of them, you know, you had a repository, and how do you tell people that this repository is now here and you should be using it to share your data? Well, you have to show them why they should be using it to share your data. So we actually have a library colleague who did a survey of curation, how well data sets were curated in the Harvard Dataverse repository. And she found that the best curated data were in 2007, 2008. And that's because those curations were being done by my team. We were the ones doing the curation to show researchers what their data could look like, the citation they could get, the preservation that they could get during that time. To show you, you know. So the reason you see such a big increase in data in 2021, which might not be obvious right away, but it's because of COVID data. We have a substantial amount of COVID data that came in that year. And I will show you the COVID collection that my team curated from all of the deposits related to COVID data that comes into Harvard Dataverse. So here's what we did. We sent, in the beginning, we sent a personal letter signed by our director, Gary King, to researchers and research projects and organizations around the world, inviting them to join the Harvard Dataverse. We told them that we would curate the collection on their behalf, which we did, to begin, to start, to give them a start. We did this for faculty, we did this for journals, we did this for departments. And then we invited them to come and see what their curated collection looked like. We talked to them about all the features that we used for their collection. And most of them said, yes, this is great. I'd like to keep it, create an account, and then they can manage their own space. You will always have somebody that cannot manage their own space. And so they might want you to manage it if you can, but if you can't, then there's not too much you can do about it. But I would say 99% of everyone that we invited and curated content for kept their space and continues to use their space. To today, we still create the faculty and organization collections to show them what it looks like. So we continue this today, this model of invitation, by creating the space for the faculty, customizing the space, adding all the features so that they can see what it looks like. And now they also have the capacity to manage their own space. For all new collections, large collections that contact us about using the Harvard Dataverse, our policy is that they get an invitation to have a demo of how to use the Dataverse. These are large collections, organizations, institutions. We do a metadata consultation with them to see if they have metadata needs. All of this is done during one demo. And we do a feature review. Because that demo allows us to see what their needs are, it also allows them to see what they're not thinking about in bringing their data into Harvard Dataverse. Is there something that they have not thought about yet? Perhaps they have not thought about their collection and how it should be organized. They have not thought about nested collections. They may not have thought about permission. So those demos allow us to get them in a good position that when they come and create their collection, they need less assistance from us and they can manage their space more independently. We also offer to any group that comes to us, mainly large collections, but any Harvard group too, that comes to us, up to 4 hours of free consultation, okay, for non-Harvard affiliates, okay? Harvard affiliates get a little more time because they are our community, and so we have to provide more time. But for non-Harvard communities, we give them up to 4 hours of consultation. That also includes those that are interested in having their own installation. So we provide a meeting with our curation team and our development team to answer their questions around installations. So this is just a screenshot of the Harvard affiliated content in all of our Dataverse categories for the Harvard Dataverse. You can see we have a lot of research projects. We have a lot of researchers, organizations, research groups. We have 8 Harvard journals. We have 5 departments in here, but we have departments in other collections that are not tagged as departments from Harvard. We have laboratories and we have teaching courses. These are all Harvard affiliated content. So we have 8 journals that are Harvard journals, and I was just showing you some of it. We have, these are all Harvard journals that we do acquisitions and outreach for, and we bring them on board and help them set up their pages to share their data. This is a project that's not Harvard, but when Trump was president, I think some of you remember that he was getting rid of a lot of the funded websites that had data, government data on it. Okay, and not for good reasons, he was getting rid of that. So we have a large project that we did where we went and we found the data that were going to be destroyed. And we brought that data into the Harvard Dataverse. We used some help from a few librarians at Harvard that we trained on how to use the Harvard Dataverse. And we salvaged 301 data sets from different government websites that were going to be destroyed. And we made sure that they were the data were brought on and here, and we are working with another larger group of the Data Refuge website to make sure that this content is published or brought back to the government websites as needed. This is the Center for Geographic Analysis at Harvard Dataverse, and they have their own collection of data, but they also link a lot of collections across Harvard. So they have data from the Japan Dataverse, they have data from the Buddhism Geographical Information System that exists at Harvard. But this is another great use of a Harvard collection and how we promote collaboration and linking across different deposits in the Harvard Dataverse. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation contracted us back in 2012 to help them share their data. I traveled to India with Mercedes Crozas, which a lot of you know, and we met with a few of their groups and we gave them demonstrations on how to use the Dataverse, but they contracted us to curate and set up the pages for them, which we did. So we still manage this page through an active grant, and they bring in data at different timelines to their collections. There's 23 Dataverse collections in here, 60 data sets and 302 files that we help to manage through a paid grant from their foundation. Now, we created this Harvard Open Data Dataverse in the Harvard University. This is data about Harvard University. It's about Harvard University, shared under CC0. And it's open to the world, but it does use a submit for review workflow. And we don't get too much data in here, but there's still active data coming in here. What you don't see is any of the draft content because we only show you published content. So the Harvard Planning Office puts data in here. The operational data store, identity and access management from Harvard is in here. Environmental health and safety, Harvard University Police Department, Harvard Art Museum. So this is a place where data about Harvard University can be de-identified, submitted in here. It's reviewed by the administrators of this collection, and then it's published. So that's one thing you could be collecting for your institution, is data about your institution that can actually be shared with others. This is a collection that I manage for the library. And this collection right now has mostly licensed data for Harvard University affiliates. I create this space when a library at Harvard contacts me. I create the space for them, and then I give them permission and access to do all of their work, to publish, to curate, to add content. It uses a Harvard Shibboleth authentication for the data, so that they don't have to put an additional restriction on the data. When we put a Harvard Shibboleth license on the data, the only people that can access the data are the people who log in with their Harvard key and PIN. When they log in, the data are open for them. If you log in here without a Harvard key and PIN, the data appears as restricted to you. So we just use this setting. Instead of restricting each data individually, we use this setting that allows us to make it available for Harvard users because of the Shibboleth authentication. So I work with the library and I let them know that this space is available. So whenever they have data they need to share, they can contact me and we can help them manage it in here. So I mentioned that in 2021, we had a large influx of COVID data, which makes sense, right? Now, this collection that you see here brings together 121 Dataverse collections that are deposited in the Harvard Dataverse separately and managed by different groups. What we do is we query the Harvard Dataverse every week, and we link all these collections in here. We link them all in here so that all of the COVID-related data can be found in one spot. So we set up this collection ourselves, and it crawls through the Harvard Dataverse, and it finds anything that's COVID-related, and it links it into this one larger collection for easier discoverability and easier access, so that people can see it. This is the collection that we highlight on the front page of the Harvard Dataverse repository page. And as you see, the query runs on schedule to link all the collections. So we also have a harvested archives in the Harvard Dataverse repository. We have 36 archives that are harvested into the Harvard Dataverse. This, of course, uses OAI PMH. 36 collections. They are Dataverse and non-Dataverse archives that are brought in here to increase discoverability of their data. When you click on a harvested data set, you are taken to the original repository, original archive, where that data exists for you to access the data. So if you look for data at the World Agroforestry, if you come in here and you click on a data set that you see the metadata and you see the files, but you can't access anything, it will take you to the World Agroforestry website. But we have an active harvesting, and the goal, of course, is to make sure that all of the Dataverse installations can harvest from each other to increase discoverability of data. This is the Harvard Center for Astrophysics that I told you about. So they require a lot of a larger support, data set size support. So we set the limit in this collection. Instead of 2.5 gigabytes, it's 46 gigabytes. They have a submit for review workflow. They also allow their researchers to do both, create both Dataverses or just deposit a data set. So this is how we support larger collections without making the entire Harvard Dataverse 46 gigabytes of support, because that would not work. But we can do it for Harvard affiliated collections. And then any collection that comes to us and is paying for support would also be allowed to have limits, different limits set for their collections in order to support their collections. If it's non-Harvard, they just have to be able to pay for the service. So these are some Harvard collaborations that are really important. I'm starting with the most recent collaboration that started in September with NIH. These collaborations allow us to provide additional services for the Harvard Dataverse, some of which, of course, extends to the Dataverse software. But a lot of the work we're doing in these collaborations are to support additional functionality in the Harvard Dataverse through grants, okay? So one of the things about the Harvard Dataverse repository is, because it's open to the worldwide community, we get a lot of support tickets. So what we have is a support system called RT. And what we did was we brought on the client support services at IQSS. They support everybody with IT questions at IQSS, but they also support the Dataverse, the Harvard Dataverse community, and the Dataverse community that send us support tickets. So if you send in a support ticket and you're a user of the Harvard Dataverse, they answer your questions, or they triage and send the tickets to my team. And if you have a question about installation of the software, they also triage those tickets and they send it to the development team at Harvard. So they help us to provide the services that we need to our community in the support queue, because without them, we would literally only be doing support, because we get so many emails every month. You know, we get about 400 support tickets a month, 300, 400 support tickets every month that come in for installations or Harvard Dataverse related questions. So they are on board to help my team to better support everybody who uses the Harvard Dataverse and to help support people who need development assistance with installations. This is what that queue looks like. It is, we have a data quest queue that is questions about data for Harvard people. We have a Dataverse administrative queue. We have a Dataverse curation services, because we offered curation services. We have 3 or 4 projects in here right now. But look at our Dataverse support queue. We have 577 tickets in there, 600 that are open, and this is what they help us to triage. I manage the MRA, and of course, there's a spam queue. So when somebody sends us a ticket, this is what it looks like. They have a question. In here, I've included my ticket and my assistant, Dwayne. We work together on this ticket right here. It's assigned to me. There's a whole bunch of attributes that we fill out, like who's managing this ticket. In this case, it's the curation team that's managing this ticket. Is it related to an integration? Is it a Harvard Dataverse collection owner? What kind of ticket is it? Is it a data request? Is it integration? Is it installation? What version are they looking for? Is it a Harvard affiliate? Are we deleting content? What feature are they looking for support in? And then we also have a free text type that we capture what kind of ticket it is if we don't have a feature listed in here. This ticket allows us not to lose any correspondence with a user. And then we can resolve this ticket when it's done. And then we can query this ticket at the end of the year for metrics. So we query this entire RT system and we get metrics for what kind of tickets came in, what features were we getting most of the tickets about? Did we get a lot of bugs? Was it the curation team, development, or the IT team at IQSS that had the most tickets? Who was spending most time on tickets? This gives us a really good idea on features that need improvement, bugs that need to be prioritized for fixing. And of course, just the regular number of users that are contacting us needing assistance. So this is what one of them looks like, right? This is our affiliate at the IQSS IT. This is how much time he spent on the tickets so far. it's a Dataverse support ticket. This one is taken by them. They are the client support service. If it was my team, it would say Curation. They needed a feature support. They needed help with data set publishing. And that's all captured in here. When it came in, when it was closed, and then I could probably be the owner of this ticket if they needed me to be. So this is how we track our user community and the kind of support they need. Now, our other big project that started in September is the GREI, or Generalist Repository Ecosystem Initiative with NIH and increasing access to biomedical data. It started in September, and then the curation team and the development team are really just getting more involved with some of the first year aims. The aim is for the Harvard Dataverse Repository, and this is in collaboration with, by the way, a few other archives, Dryad, Figshare, and Zenodo. So they're also working on these tools. But in particular, things that we talk about here are going to be for the Harvard Dataverse, and things that can be for the Dataverse software will also be for the Dataverse software. We are going to be supporting very large data sets, which we've already started to model for the Harvard Dataverse. And we're going to be integrating a metadata in the repository with the data in the research computing storage. So we are talking about remote storage as a way, linked data, basically, remote storage, so that we can support the metadata, and the data could possibly exist in remote storage because of the size. We are increasing support for biomedical and cross-domain metadata standards and controlled vocabularies. We are doing support for code, workflows, and containers. So we are actually already working on workflows as part of another project called Harvard Data Commons that I'm going to tell you about. But the code and the software and containers is going to be part of this NIH initiative. And these are all first year goals. Some of these are all for first year goals. It's a 4-year grant. We're going to improve harvesting and packaging standards to share metadata and data across repositories. I already showed you that we are harvesting 36 Dataverse and non-Dataverse installations in the Harvard Dataverse. We are going to want to harvest from all Dataverse installations. And some of this in particular will be for the Harvard Dataverse installation. We're going to be standardizing use metrics with the repository and across other repositories. Make data count is the usage metrics that I'm talking about. We're going to be supporting sharing and discovering of sensitive data. That will be data tags, and that will be OpenDP, which is differential privacy. And that is in particular, we're going to improve the tool, but then Harvard Dataverse is going to use that tool. Figshare will determine if they're going to use that tool. Dryad will determine if they're going to use that tool. And then so other Dataverse installations have to determine if they're going to use the tool. For Harvard Dataverse, we are going to be using the tool. So this is something that we're going to be doing directly for Harvard Dataverse. We're going to improve the user experience in the UX, user interface in the UI, and application program interface APIs for depositing, viewing, and accessing data sets in the repository to facilitate use. Well, you know that when we improve UX and UI and APIs, that is all for all Dataverse installations. That's not just for the Harvard Dataverse. We are going to be incorporating this into the Harvard Dataverse, obviously, but that's something that benefits the Dataverse software. Curation services, outreach and training for managing and sharing data, that is by repository. So for Harvard Dataverse, we are going to be doing this. We are going to be doing training, more services, more outreach for our community at Harvard and beyond that is sharing NIH-funded research. So this is the NIH-funded project that started in September. It's a really big initiative because of the collaborations and because of all of the features that we are going to be building and the integrations that we're going to be building for not only the Dataverse software, but bringing into the Harvard Dataverse. All right, the Harvard Data Commons is a project that is being done across Harvard. It is to integrate the research computing environments, Harvard repositories, and publishing repositories across Harvard to support each other. There are 4 goals that we've been working on now for the past year, okay? The number 1 is supporting deposit of large data sets in Dataverse via Globus Connect tool. Updating the Dataverse to support upload and use of workflow data sets. When we talk about workflows, we're talking about Jupyter Notebook, RSpace, we're talking about workflow files, make file, and I can list some of the other files, but we're working on how to support that in the UI, in the UX of Dataverse installations. So we're working to support these files, but the changes that will be made to the Dataverse software to allow any installation to support workflows. The other objective, and this is for Harvard Dataverse, is to automatically export and preserve data in Harvard's digital repository service, which exists at the library. So it is another level of preservation for Harvard Dataverse repository. So that's not something that that is for the whole Dataverse software, but the tool that is being built here will be available in the Dataverse software for use by any installation, by any Dataverse installation. And the other thing we are doing is creating a link between data sets in, this should say Harvard Dataverse, and related publications in Dash, because Dash is a publishing platform at Harvard. It's in the Office of Scholarly Communication, and they are supposed to have a publication of any publication from a Harvard affiliate at Harvard. They're supposed to have a copy. This project is going to make sure that any publication they have has a data set in the Harvard repository, and any data set in the Harvard repository has put their publication in Dash. The integration that they're creating, though, should be added to the Dataverse software to allow any installation to connect data to their publishing platform at their institution. So everything that's being done is going to in some way help other installations to have the capability to do what we're doing here. So, of course, since the Harvard Library manages or pays for the storage that is provided by Harvard Dataverse, we are always in collaboration with the Harvard Library and their research data management at Harvard University. They showcase Dataverse collections on their library page. We talk to them about training. We do trainings together. We create DMP tools together. So we work very closely with the library community to provide training and services to the Harvard community in order for them to use the repository, the Harvard repository. I've showed you the subscription Dataverse we do with the library. This is very particular support for the Harvard Library, where we help them create collections for their licensed data. The other tool that we use at Harvard is called Open Scholar at Harvard. This application actually started at IQSS, and then it became its own thing at Harvard. The reason I'm mentioning this is because they have an integration with the Dataverse software. This is where the widget, if you have a Harvard Dataverse collection, if you have a Dataverse collection, period, no matter where you are, you can take your collection and the widget allows you to put that widget in a faculty page that you have that's been created by Open Scholar. So all academics at Harvard are encouraged to create their website with this application, Open Scholar. When they create their faculty website with Open Scholar, they are able to integrate their Dataverse collection widget, their Harvard Dataverse collection widget, very easily into Open Scholar. So this is a service that anyone can use. This is not just for Harvard because they're no longer just a Harvard entity. You pay for the use of their application. And this is what it looks like. So this is Gary King, our director. This is his faculty website. He has a Dataverse widget that is supported by that Open Scholar application. This is what it looks like. And so when I go to his website and I click on Dataverse, his Dataverse that's in the Harvard collection shows up. And then when I click on it, of course, I come to the Harvard Dataverse where his widget, where his Dataverse lives. But I can also browse his collection directly in here. Everybody can use the widget now, but it's not integrated this way. It doesn't say Dataverse if you're not using Open Scholar. You can make it say data, you can make it say Dataverse, but the Open Scholar app for building faculty website actually incorporates it directly into the toolbar. So just to wrap up, because we want to take questions and I want to be able to have a conversation. We will be sending out the registration for the annual Dataverse community meeting soon. We did send out the survey. I shared that survey with your community. The meeting is June 14th through the 17th. It's virtual and I encourage you to attend. If you are an installation manager, I encourage you to attend. And then I have some references here to those projects that I told you about today so that you can continue to see what we've been working on these projects of paid curation, the Harvard Data Commons, the NIH grant, our support website and policies. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I am still recording. And I did that in under an hour. Yay, you should be proud because I like to talk. Miguel knows I like to talk.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
So I know we have questions, but you know what I'm going to do, Miguel? And I'm trying to see, can we go to the QA first? I just want to see what's in the QA. Okay, because there's less questions in the QA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes,
so
please.
and then we'll do the chat because we have time. All right. So the first question is from Sonia, and she asks, the difficulty Harvard had in the beginning, lack of use acceptance from the user, difficulty. Yeah. So Sonia, I mentioned how we got started, and literally it took us 3 years to really get people to start depositing data on their own. Most of the curation that you saw, we did. You know why? They have to see their colleagues doing it. They have to see the benefits of the data sharing when they come to the Dataverse, to the Harvard Dataverse page, and they see the citation. They see the download. They see the data is preserved. They see the metadata. They see the descriptions. Once they see their colleagues doing it and they see the benefits, then they are more willing to accept and come on board. But literally for 3 years, people don't know that 2004, 2005, 2006, we were doing all the curation, almost all of the curation. It was a lot of outreach, and again, you showed them what they're getting. So what you do is you go to a faculty website, you look for their research data, you create a collection for them in draft format, you bring in a couple of their data sets in draft format, and then you send them an invitation and you say, you know, we want to show you what we created for your data in draft because you don't share things without permission, but we want you to see what it looks like and what you can do with this system. And when you show it to them, you'll be very surprised. And even though your faculty do not have, maybe not have time to manage a page, you know who does have time to manage the page? The faculty support person, their faculty administrator, whoever their office administrator is. You know how everybody has an assistant? Our faculty give that job to their assistant. They say, manage my Dataverse website. But once you start getting content in there, trust me, as their colleagues see, because then you can use that content that's published now to show other people what the Dataverse installation does. Okay. It says o pagamento é feito pela pesquisador individual. What does that mean?
Okay, wait. Is the payment made by the individual researchers?
For which part?
Or I don't know, maybe all the work.
No, so Harvard Dataverse is free until you go over the 1 terabyte limit. Harvard Dataverse is free until you go over the 1 terabyte limit. If we have an individual researcher, we tell them to write, if they have a large data over 1 terabyte, that's we ask them to write it into their grant. If they're getting a grant to collect their data, they write that cost into their grant. It's not a lot of money. Believe it or not, it could be as low as $500 a year. I mean, what we did an estimate recently, 14 terabytes of data would cost about $9,000 a year. 14 terabytes. So if you're at 1.5 terabyte, it's not a lot of money every year. So even an individual researcher who puts in a grant can pay. Yes, they would have to individually pay, set up payment for that. Do you need to translate that or is that okay?
No, it's okay. Acho que entenderam, sim. A forma de pagamento é a partir de 1 terabyte. Eles aconselham o pesquisador para que ele coloque esse valor em seu projeto de pesquisa, para que possa ser assim financiado o trabalho do repositório. Okay, next one.
All right. Marcelo is interested in knowing how the paid curation services work. So Marcelo, you know what I'm going to do? I think one of the conversations we should also schedule in the year for one of the webinars is developing the paid curation services. So Miguel, you might want to just make note of that, that we can have a whole conversation because we have a lot of documentation on how we developed that service in collaboration with the library. Okay. And because right now, I mean, it would take me 20 minutes to talk about it, but we can definitely include that as a larger webinar. But I can tell you that, so there is interest. You know, the problem is that a lot of people did not plan ahead in their grant and funding for it. We have very large projects that we're doing right now. They all happen to be Harvard projects. One of these collections from the Harvard Semitic Museum, you know, has it's 60,000 data sets. And what we're doing, you know, part of these paid curation services is it helps us develop a process for supporting data that we normally don't get to work with. Okay, we're developing a system so that when we get these different types of data, for example, library collections as data. See, library content as data is different from what a lot of us are used to, but we are developing a script that if we get a collection like this before, this is a script that nobody has. We're developing it now. If we get a similar collection, it will not take us this long to do it again, to curate that collection again.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's the same thing we're doing with this 60,000 data set study. It's a archaeology study. They have at their institution, they have a 3D viewer. We don't have. We're connecting the metadata and the DOI that they don't have available to them on the Harvard Dataverse. We're connecting it to the 3D image at their website. So you have metadata and 3D image connected with a DOI. That's a whole different project we've never done before. We are doing it now. And then when another project like that comes, we'll have all the scripts available to do it very quickly. Because we go through the bugs, we go through any issues in taking this on. We are fixing the workflow so that it's easier, it's better. And these are the kind of things that doing curation also helps us with, is planning for content that we would normally not get or not be working with because people do their self-deposits, but when we do it better. And it also helps us build the tools for it if we need it.
So all these issues need to be mentioned on the plan, I mean, on the beginning of the project.
You have, right. So you have to make a plan for all of the things that you could possibly be have to address. But if I show you our pilot document, it's very long. It's very detailed. You go to our curation website and you see the product of all that planning. But the planning itself is very long, but it would be great to have a whole session on that with your team.
Okay. Next one.
So then you have Marcelo asked, how are self-curated Dataverse supposed to be described and indexed in a way that are retrieved afterwards? I'm not sure I understand the question though.
I guess he is concerned about the patterns of description that the self-curated Dataverse has.
So in self-curated repositories, you have to allow some flexibility. So remember, we have people that come into the Harvard Dataverse and they just put in a data set. We make certain fields required. You have to put in a description. Do they always put in a good description? No. But I'm not concerned about the individual researcher who's putting in a short description. Because what you also have are organizations, institutions, teaching courses that are coming in and putting in more elaborate descriptions. And they're using more metadata fields. And they're using file tags. And they're using file descriptions. And they're doing a better job. But let me tell you, one of the things I mentioned in my webinar just now in the presentation, one of the things I mentioned was, we have a policy that when an organization or a group contacts our support, that's usually how they start, and they say, we're interested in using the Harvard Dataverse. We invite them for a demo to talk about their data and their needs and how to best use Dataverse. When you have a self-curated repository, you have to think about which collections you want to worry about and which collections are okay. Self-curated, unless you have a very large curation team, will never all be the same. But that's why if you notice the front page of the Harvard Dataverse, in the very front page of the Harvard Dataverse, we only show you the controlled metadata, author, affiliation, publication. We don't show you keywords because individual researchers use their own keywords. Collections use their own keywords that are usually tied to standards. Collections do a better job. But we still want to provide the support to the individual researcher who needs it. Journals do a better job, organizations do a better job, institutions do a better job, but I've also seen individual deposits that do a great job. So you have to think about overall, if you're going to be a self-curated repository, you need to allow flexibility in how people deposit data. We haven't made more than those 5 fields required: title, author, subject, description, contact. We could make more if we wanted to, but then that starts to make it just slightly harder for people to deposit their data. So you have to determine which costs more. Okay? Sonia asked, how are the trainings to the users based on the main doubts? No, so I guess Sonia, are you asking about the trainings to the Harvard Library community, or are you asking about the trainers to the organizations and institutions that come from around the world and want to know how to use the Harvard installation? I deal with a lot of older users, and I manage their data because of where they're putting it in the Harvard Dataverse. The Murray archive that I manage has a lot of older users, and I do spend a lot of time with them, my older users that I'm managing the collection for. But that's what our support is there for. Our support team, along with IQSSI team that offers support, they know how to answer questions to people who are not very tech savvy. So they'll come in and say, I put my data in the wrong place. They move it for them. But that's part of having a support team to do the work. So it's not just my team. Like my team doesn't have to move data because we've trained the IQSS IT team on how to move data. We've trained them on how to merge accounts. We've trained them on doing things that don't require a decision about curation, but I made a mistake or I made another account, or all of that they know how to do. So yeah, occasionally we encounter an older user who needs more handholding, but we manage that. It's not overwhelming. But the trainings for the demos we do, oh, we'll have 1 or 2 meetings and then they're all set. And what we offer to do for large collections, we offer to do this, is we review their collection before they publish it to make sure they've used everything. They do all the work. But we'll take 30 minutes when they're ready to publish. We'll go in, we'll look at their collection, and we'll make sure that they've used everything they should use. And then we give them feedback on what they need to improve before they publish. And imagine my team is small. My team is small and we have a big group of people that use us, but we still manage to find 30 minutes to tell a collection that we know is going to make good use of the platform. They could be grant funded, they're sharing data, that we are going to take a look before they publish. So Keita, how do you pronounce Keita? Kate. How do you limit the size of files by collection? Is it in the Dataverse? So no, our development team keeps track of the size that's coming in. On the back end, the developers can always see what size collections are coming in. And we also limit it because 2.5 gigabytes per file. So we can see when they're getting over the 1 terabyte. Nobody can, the development team catches large collections coming in. Because when large collections are being deposited, they impact your system. So if somebody's putting in, that's how we know. We always find people who are impacting the system. We start getting some kind of error on the system, and then development goes and does a search and they can find out exactly who's slowing down the system. And then of course, limiting the size by collection. So like I mentioned for Center for Astrophysics, we increased their collection size because they need it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to upload their files and we would have to do it for them, and we don't need to. But we did that just for their collection, not the other collections. So they can use the UI to deposit on their own without our assistance.
Oh, there's another one here, but it's in Portuguese.
Yeah, I just don't know what armazenamento means.
Wait. I'm doing the translation. Google Translation.
Thank you.
We are at the beginning of our data repository, and our biggest problem is still to storage, where to store, best option, what size to make available to guarantee the security of this data. Our researchers still wouldn't pay for this service.
Yeah, well, remember, so imagine we don't charge. We are fortunate enough to have an endowment, and we do not charge our users that do not go over the 1 terabyte limit. Our library pays for the storage. Harvard Library pays for the storage, and they didn't have to. It's a collaboration. IQSS is not a part of the library. But in collaboration with the library, because they have, they also have a, data, access to content, access to information. Our library, head of the library, the Harvard Library, supports the idea of Dataverse, of Harvard Dataverse. And so they pay for storage. We are actually going to be doing additional preservation, the one that I told you about with the Harvard Data Commons and the DRS at Harvard. That will be paid for by the individual departments at Harvard. That will not be paid for by IQSS. It will not be paid for by the library. Collections at Harvard from each department will use their budget to pay, and it's not a lot, it's a couple $100 a year, to pay for this additional long-term preservation. So right now we preserve our data in the cloud in S3. We have a different storage system that we use for the Center for Astrophysics because they need more storage. So we use a different S3 storage bucket for them. But then there's also this additional layer of preservation and storage that's going to be done with the Harvard Library, but the Harvard departments have to pay for that.
So can I ask you something?
Yeah.
The big picture. I mean, you're talking about payment from the researchers from the same institution. So
because the reason I'm talking about payment for this for the same institution is because the Harvard DRS repository does not store data from outside of Harvard affiliates. We have a conversation to have with them about how we can pay for that. But they do not, because it's a Harvard organization. So this is the one limitation. And with that additional storage, additional level of preservation is that it's only for Harvard affiliated content because it's the Harvard Library. They never store content from outside Harvard.
I understand.
But for our general users, our general population, you know, find the collaborative entities at your organization. Again, the IQSS is not part of Harvard Library, but we went to the Harvard Library and said, this is an institutional repository that supports not only Harvard, but the worldwide community. We want to talk support. How can you support our storage?
Understand.
So imagine, we are not the same organization. I mean, we're Harvard, but we're not the same group. But the library saw the benefit of having an institutional repository, even though we serviced not just Harvard, but anybody. But they saw the benefit of that repository.
It's kind of similar when the researcher asked to the library to buy a journal or to subscription to a journal, isn't it?
Right. Right. I mean, when Harvard has access to a journal, all of Harvard has access to a journal. It's not just a particular department that has access to a journal.
Exactly.
But your library and your repository go hand in hand in terms of supporting each other. Okay, Miguel, the rest of the questions are in the chat. Let me see. There's a lot of good morning.
Yeah, it's because I put the translation there too, so maybe it's confused.
Oh, no, maybe it's you instead of questions. Are there questions there?
No, really. I guess they got the idea to put on the KI. So
Okay.
no,
Yeah. So, you know, there was a lot that we talked about, but what I really want you to see is all the different collaborations we do across Harvard and the library. Like I said, IQSS is not part of the library, but look at all the collaborations we do with the library and the other, and research computing. So the university took initiative. The university took initiative and said, research computing should be dealing more with storage, tools, repositories, libraries, and that's how the Harvard Data Commons came about. And then the NIH grant is Zenodo, Dryad, Figshare, Dataverse, and they came together and put in a grant proposal to do this work with NIH and support the data.
Right. So, well, we're almost on time. Okay. So
we do have time, but I think you also had, so if I take a look at my schedule, your lunch break is starting.
Yes.
Until 11:10. So the lunch break is 10:30, is now until 11:10. Miguel, if you want to put that in the chat.
Yes, so we come back at 1:10 p.m. Brazilian time, okay?
So when you guys come back, I'm just going to quickly share my screen, that when you guys come back, we are going to be looking at this document.
Sim, sim, exato. Então, pessoal, vamos parar por aqui e vamos voltar a 1:10 para continuar com o webinar de hoje e vamos fazer uns exercícios também com toda aquela informação que estávamos esperando de vocês, mas vamos fazer tudo ao vivo aqui, junto com a Sônia, para a gente aprender pouco mais, ok?
So what I'm going to do is excuse me, let me close this. I'm going to put this
to open for everyone.
In the chat. I need to make sure that people have access to it, Miguel. I might need to open up the access, so give me a second.
Okay.
Oh, let me stop sharing. Let me open up the access to this document. Let's see. I'm gonna do it, okay? I'm gonna send the link now in chat because now I opened it up.
Okay.
So if you have questions, you can wait and we'll chat together and do it so we get the right answers.
Okay.
But at least what you can do is, if you have time over lunch, is go in there and put the name of your installation. So we have Harvard Dataverse, Cariniana, UFG, Arcadados, Firecruz. Put in your name of your installation so that we can work through these questions together, because the last talk has to start on time. Okay, so thank you, everyone. Enjoy your lunch break.
Ok, obrigado. Thank you, Sonia. So, esperamos vocês a 1:10, por favor. Quem já puder entrar lá na planilha, por favor, podem começar a preencher o que vocês acharem que é necessário. Ok? Obrigado, bom almoço e até as 1:10. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you. Go enjoy your lunch break.
Okay, we need to get out of this room, or
you can stay in the room. Stay in the room.
Okay, so no fechem essa tela, por favor, podem deixar apenas fechados o microfone e o vídeo, ok? Mas estamos aqui. Obrigado.
Okay.
Tchau, tchau.
I also forgot to turn it off when we went on break, but that's okay. So what I was saying about Cielo, and let me share my screen again, about the template, about the terms. So as you know, we are working on a feature that you can select all the different licenses plus a custom terms. That is a feature that is being worked on. It's not ready yet, but it should be ready soon. In the meantime, you can create a template. You can create templates in your installation. You can create a template for CC0. You can create a template for CC BY. You can create as many templates with different licenses as you need. And then when the organization or the journal deposits their data, whoever's doing the deposit, they will pick the right template with the right license to deposit the data set.
Sonia, we have a question from Maria de Fátima. Maria de Fátima, can you speak?
Sim, está me ouvindo, Miguel?
Sim, pode falar.
Sônia me perguntou por que gostaríamos de bloquear, customizar, né, o bloqueio de alguns metadados. Porque possuímos pesquisas clínicas e aí algumas pesquisas não devem conter nos seus metadados, para o público de forma geral, alguns dados ou informações que venham prejudicar uma patente, uma inovação, ou algo que ainda está em processo de legitimidade daquela pesquisa. Então, alguns metadados gostaríamos, sim, de manter bloqueados.
Yeah. Do you understand that, Sonia?
Something about metadata being blocked?
Yes, she said that she would like to implement, but it's not possible because some data and some research, they don't have the permission to upload the data openly, you know, for people to access. So
They don't have, so some researchers don't have the permission to share the data?
Not really the permission, but they don't can put some information on the metadata because they are clinical information.
For example,
I'm trying to understand what the problem. I don't know what the problem is, Miguel. Can you try to explain it again? Or she can share.
Maria de Fátima, você pode explicar qual é o problema realmente? Por que vocês não podem deixar em aberto os metadados?
Isso. Só um segundo, Miguel. Minha garrafa d'água caiu em cima do meu teclado.
Uau!
I can't believe.
No problem.
Okay.
Deixa eu explicar. Algumas pesquisas, às vezes, estão em processo de sendo analisados, por exemplo, por uma agência de fomento. Um exemplo. Vamos supor que uma pesquisa que tenha algumas fotos que irão gerar um aplicativo, algo assim, tem que ficar embargado para que o financiador libere. Se ficar todos os metadados liberados, podemos correr o risco de outra instituição, outra organização, pegar a ideia e correr para produzir o mesmo processo.
Okay. I think I understand.
É algo temporário.
Temporário.
Right.
Temos alguns casos assim. Então,
ok.
Porque quando passa pela nossa coordenação tecnológica, há uma indicação de que tome muito cuidado com a divulgação desses dados para que não perca a patente ou o direito da inovação. E aí, às vezes, alguns metadados já dizem o que é, né?
Did you get the idea?
So what I understood is some people have research that they can't share yet because if they publish it, then somebody could take the idea because they're still waiting on something to confirm that publication, right? Okay.
Sim.
So here's the thing, okay? When you publish a research article or when you publish a research data set, okay, even if you're waiting for a publication, all right? When you publish that research data set and you have a citation, it's actually harder for somebody to steal your work because you already published a data set on it. It's actually more difficult for somebody to steal your idea because you have a record that you deposited the data, you have a citation, and you have your research idea there, published. Now, a lot of people will deposit data, they won't publish it because then they have the citation in their DOI that they can share with the journal, or they can use the private URL feature to share that. But even when that idea is in draft format, that means that it's not like somebody else is not thinking about the same thing. Somebody else out there is already thinking about studying something that you're thinking about studying, okay? It's not a one-person idea. The thing is that when you publish, it's actually harder for somebody to steal your idea. When you publish first.
Sim, Maria Fátima, não sei se você deu para entender, ela, em certa forma, está justificando, porque você pode colocar ele no Dataverse, porque isso, de certa forma, cria um registro de uma primeira pessoa, o primeiro projeto que tratou do assunto. Então, de certa forma, ela está advogando para que se coloque no Dataverse e que seja feito para registro, de certa forma, de ser primórdios, né? de um tema, de uma patente. Ok?
Compreendi. Obrigada, compreendi.
No problem. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Researchers don't sometimes see that, but publishing a data set is almost like publishing the article before somebody else. And you have a record of a date that you published the data that you collected around the publication. So it's like you have that publication date on your side to make your idea public first. Now, of course, when you publish and you don't want somebody to take your data and use it, you publish the metadata and you restrict the data files. So make sure that's clear too, Miguel, that you publish the metadata, but you restrict the data file so somebody doesn't do something with your data.
Sí, eso eu acredito que também já foi compreendido, né? Publicar os metadados não tira nenhum problema, não cria problema para a patente, sim? Ok, podemos continuar?
Clear?
Keep going.
Okay.
So we are still in the first.
Yeah, because I was asking questions, but people are not here. So I've kind of put the highlighted the ones that I have a question on. So what I'm going to do is go to the data set level features. I was hoping we'd have more of the
fulfill, yeah,
installations, but that's okay. So Miguel, you still need to find out if you support replication data 4.
Sure. You're thinking about the replication data for metadata supported. Remember that we watched it on the Cariniana network, and we didn't find this button to do the replication.
Well, I couldn't see the button because I'm not registered in your Dataverse. You have to be the one that goes to add a data set. It's part of the data set template, so it's going to be there.
Yes, I promise to check it this week.
Okay. So, Cielo, are you using, so like for Cielo, Rondinelli, you guys should be using the journal metadata block?
Yes.
That should be required for your journals.
Yeah, we are using, yeah.
Yes, but you didn't fill it out. Are you using it?
Yeah, because this part is not me that was filled out.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was thinking that journal metadata was not customizing or additional one. It's like it's a demand one.
It's not a default though.
Okay.
Required. You have to make it required. So
okay.
The only default metadata that comes with the Dataverse software is citation.
Okay.
Citation is always required.
Perfect.
The other ones you have to make required. So anything with a journal should definitely be using the journal meta. You should make that required in your installation. At the installation level,
yeah,
it should be required at the installation level so that journals know they have to fill out the information about the series and the volume and the publication date.
Okay.
And of course, you're using related publications. So I'm going to tell you guys, these fields right here go together. Okay. Related publication, this one and this one, they go together. The issue with this related publication ID type, ID number, and URL is that if you do not use the ID type, the ID number, data site cannot pick it up. So if somebody cites your data and you're using make data count, if you don't have these fields filled in, make data count is not going to catch the citation. Whenever you fill out the related publication, make sure the ID type field is filled out, make sure the ID number field is filled out, and then the URL. Even our people don't use it properly. They put everything in this related publication field. They put a link to the article in the related publication field instead of using the ID type and the ID number and the URL. So these three fields, I'm actually going to make it a different color.
Mhm.
These three fields should be used in collaboration with each other. Okay. So anonymous peer review is coming, but Rondinelli's group already put it in. Great. Please do send us feedback. We want to know how it's working.
Mhm.
Private URL, of course, they can use it. Let's see. So why didn't that? Oh, it didn't save because I'm on a different sheet. Freeze one column. So for the related publication, no, for the publishing workflow, Cielo and Fiocruz, although we might not have anybody from Fiocruz back here yet.
No, yeah, they are here.
I know, but she wasn't, they weren't available. They're not on, like they're on, but they're not responding.
Mhm.
So who gets to publish? Like Rondinelli, is somebody from your team doing all the publishing, or do the journals do their own publishing?
I think is the author or I know the Dataverse created by the journal. We create the Dataverse for the journal, and the journal is responsible for the administrator of the Dataverse in that case.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So in this case, the depositor is the curator.
Yeah.
So we can say for yours, journal admin is the curator and can publish. I don't know if they're using the submit for the ones that you have now, if they use a submit for review, because what the journal administrator or the journal editor does is they tell the author, come and deposit your data set. And then the author can publish, or the journal administrator has to review it, and the journal administrator is the one that publishes.
Yeah, I don't. I think that the journal admin can publish. I think someone from Cielo do the job for that, because has to do. It's necessary for the person to make sure that all the fields and everything is okay before to publish. You know. I'm not sure about it, Sonia, because I'm not the person who do this process, you know.
Okay, so you can check, it's okay. You can check.
Yeah, I will go to
your
check.
team
Yeah.
member.
Okay,
Right.
perfect. And I go to fill out this field. And I
Okay,
can explain better.
okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Does anybody have questions on this data set level feature? Any questions on this section? Now, there's a whole lot of metadata. I didn't include all of it here because there's over 100 fields of metadata. But what I did was try to capture the ones that, the new ones, first of all, the new features, and then the important ones, like the related publication. The citation metadata is already required, so I don't need to put that in here, but the citation metadata is required. Do we have more questions in here? I can't. Okay. There was a question in here. I don't know if we answered it in chat. It's from Adriana, Miguel.
Where?
Is it patents? The patents, I think it says patentes.
Yes. No, she's confirming and telling what the answer to your question. In case only when it's sensitive data or potential innovation on patents is when they put the embargo.
Yeah, you have to be very careful with patents. The other thing with patents, so patent data is very different from a regular data set. Now, I'm going to tell you, it's very hard to find out the best way to share patent data. I've been trying for years. I've reached out to the patent data experts at Harvard, and I have not heard back from anybody, because we also had a very interesting case with a patent data set. It wasn't data. It was all their documents. It wasn't data. And you have to be careful that in your installation, be very careful with patents that people are pointing to medication. You don't want to be responsible for that. If somebody deposits patent data, Adriana, and make sure they're not linking to a medication website. Make sure they're not using your installation name to promote their medication website if it's medication. Okay, that's really important. Trademark issues with your institution and somebody's patent data. Because they'll, you know, people can use your institution to say you support their patent. And that's not true. If you're supporting the data, doesn't mean you support the patent. Okay. And then of course, with patents, you don't want to release the data until everything is ready, right? You have the data, you have the document. You don't give your idea away until you have the patent. That's very different from a regular data set where you are studying a topic, but it's not related to a patent. So earlier I said, yeah, you want to publish a data set, you know, social science data set in psychology and sociology and anything. It's not related to a patent. You want to publish and get the credit for your work first. Patents are different because patent is an idea that you are trying to get a license for under your name. So that one, but when you share, make sure that they're actually sharing the data to support the patent, not just documentation, not just paperwork that they get approval. They need to share the data on how they got the patent, how they that data supports their research around the patent. Okay, and they don't share that until they have their patent and until the data obviously has passed something, but watch the links they put in to make sure they're not linking to something that you don't want your institution affiliated with. Okay. Okay. So this one is done. We're going to go to the file level features really quickly. So for the file level features, all file types supported, great. File descriptions. So Cielo, Rondinelli, when you guys are doing your I should say your data set descriptions actually. So not even your file level descriptions, but on data set descriptions for journals, typically in order to keep it consistent, what you want is for your journals, for each of the data sets, it should be the abstract that goes in the description field. The abstract that's in the article is what should go in the description field for the data set.
Yeah, I don't know if the author or depository are doing this way.
Right. So what you do is, again, by utilizing the template feature, you can ask that all deposits for the description field should deposit the abstract from the article. So Ronanel, if you need, like, when you have your installation, if you want to meet and we go over how your installation is set up to support journals, we can do that. You know, we can just schedule a meeting.
Okay.
And I can help you guys use the template for your license and then to set it up properly for your journal deposits.
Okay.
Doesn't take long.
Perfect.
But you go reach out to me.
Thank you, Sonia.
You're welcome. We don't need like 30 minutes to set it up. So file level descriptions are always good. Okay. It is managed by the depositor, but and it's not used. But even for Harvard Dataverse, it's not used. It's not consistent, and it's not used because we allow self-curation and people decide what they're going to do. Okay, so it's not even consistent for us. Tabular file support data analysis tool. Firecrew said they're not using any tool. I would like to support see what they need in order to use the tool? Because it's Data Explorer or it's two Ravens. And they are not using either from this reply. They are both integrated tools, so you do have to integrate it. But if they need help with the integration, you know, we can make sure they get the help with the integration. You know what?
Para alguém que esteja da Fiocruz, a Sônia está se disponibilizando para ajudar nessa parte da ferramenta de data analysis. Alguém gostaria de responder? Again,
So I'm also added a space here for repository manager, if people can fill that out.
you mean the name or
The name of the repository manager. Okay, and people can fill that out whenever they're, hey,
the first one, the core name.
what happened? Okay, I'm gonna go back to the file level features. So they're using the file previewer. Okay. Oh, we already enabled.
Okay.
So again, it's available.
Sônia,
Yeah.
a Maria de Fátima, ela quer falar sobre Fiocruz, só pouquinho.
She says she's not able to, but I don't know why.
Yes, now it's here. She can.
Okay.
Okay. Maria de Fátima, pode falar? Maria?
Yeah, she said in the chat that she can't talk, but I don't know why.
I don't know why either.
She said she's not able.
Agora sim.
Agora,
Sim.
desculpa, acho que a conexão também não está muito boa. Quando Sônia perguntou se tínhamos, né, uma ferramenta para análise, né, dos dados, visualização de dados, nós estamos estudando e fiquei muito interessada na proposta dela de trabalhar conosco, com o oferecimento do trabalho dela, porque nos interessa muito isso. Porque temos um observatório na Fiocruz, Ciência, Tecnologia e Inovação, que já fazemos isso. E gostaria muito de que isso também funcionasse dentro do Dataverse. Então, isso é um domínio, né, que precisamos ampliar e trazer para dentro do Dataverse. Vai ser muito importante para a própria instituição e também para os indicadores, né, nacionais de produção científica.
Okay, Sonia, she says that she's very interested in your help for that data analysis tool.
Okay, because, you know, this is what, you know, John Crabtree leads the GDCC. And we have, so for the Dataverse community meeting, we are going to have a big session on how to provide all this support to the installations. That's one, because we want to make sure all the installations are up to date with the latest version and the tools. So this is good for me to know what you're having trouble with, because I can also bring it to him and say, you know, we have this large, he knows, John has gone to Brazil. He knows that you have a lot of installations. And so it's possible for us to arrange something to come together and get everybody up to date on the tools and on the versions.
Okay.
But if we don't know, then that's how we don't, you know, so this is helpful to me to have this filled out, because I can bring this back to John and say, you know, they don't have it on because they need support in doing it and they are not able to find the support.
Okay. Okay, Maria.
Sim, ontem o René, lá da UX, né, nos mostrou essa funcionalidade. E ficamos muito interessados.
Yes, absolutely. We want to make sure that all the installations are able to do something that they want to do. Like you should not be stuck without having a data analysis visualization tool because you're having problems with it. That shouldn't be, you know, something that you have to worry about. That's something that the GDCC community comes together and we say, okay, let's figure out what we need to do to bring that into the Fiocruz installation. So we will absolutely, this is going to be very helpful for me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So in terms of the embargo, I know it's manual, so we'll need to integrate the tool. You'll have to enable the tool. So the tool, the embargo tool is actually considered both a feature, a default feature, and an integration. So I think once we figure out where you are with, did I freeze this? I should have. Once we figure out where you are with the version, I think you already put your version in here, 5.6. Okay, so I think it's going to be that you have to update the version in order to have the embargo feature. So once we do the update your version of the software, then we'll be able to enable the embargo feature. Okay. What is it?
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Restricted content. Okay, so, all right. We'll talk about, I think we'll have a whole session with Fiocruz to get you guys up to date, to figure out what all the needs are and then what's not being supported. And then figure out how to help get that supported. Okay, so this restricted content audit is really important for your repository for a number of reasons, okay? If you tell people you can put in data, like we're open, you can come in and put in data, okay? You wanna make sure that all of the restricted content that the person who put in the data, the depositor, still has an active email. You don't want a data set that's restricted where the depositor is no longer available, the author is no longer available, because then nobody can ever access that data. You know, if a depositor puts in restricted data and then, God forbid, the depositor dies, right? If you don't own copyright to that data, you cannot make that data available. So you need to deaccession that data set with the reason why that data is no longer available. But you should not have restricted content existing in your installation if the author who manages that restriction is unavailable, whoever the depositor is who manages that restriction is unavailable, their email no longer works, they died, etc. You need to have a plan to say, we need to make sure all the restricted data that those people who manage that are still around and we can still contact them. Sometimes they forget to update their email. They still need to be contacted and they need to update their email.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to explain that? Miguel, I don't know if you can.
No, sure, if I can understand.
So what it is that anybody, if I manage a restricted data set in Fiocruz right now, and it's my email and I'm the one who makes decisions when somebody requests access to the data. If I disappear, if you don't have copyright to that data, you cannot unrestrict that data and make it available. You cannot. So, and you also can't just leave it sitting in your repository without being accessed. So you have to look at your restricted data sets, contact all those people that have restricted data sets and say, This is an annual check, yearly check, quarterly check to make sure that you are still available and managing this restricted data set.
Okay. Yeah, can I say that? No sé si vocês entenderam mais ou menos a importância dessa auditoria, exatamente, de conteúdo restrito, no sentido de que cada ano tem que ser verificado que as pessoas que colocaram essa restrição estão ainda conscientes e estão responsáveis pelo conteúdo que está ali. Eles têm que fazer tipo prova de vida para poder continuar esse conteúdo ser restrito, porque em caso que alguma dessas pessoas não responda, esse acesso já ninguém vai poder abrir ele. Ok?
Automaticamente fica fechado, é isso? Depois?
Perdão?
Automaticamente ele vai ficar fechado se não houver essa resposta do tipo prova de vida, aí, ok? Ou não?
Deixa eu perguntar. Sonia, she's saying that if nobody answered the question, annual question, the content is going to be closed forever?
If nobody answers it, you should de-accession the data set.
Accession?
De-accession. De-accession.
Accession.
You know what de-accession. Hold on, Miguel. Tell me if this is showing up when I share it. Give me a second.
É aquela ação, Miguel, que você não exclui, uma vez publicado, você não pode excluir o dataset, mas você dá
desacessar.
Sim.
Okay.
De-accession is a so de-accession is what you use, especially if a data set has been downloaded. You can never delete a data set that has been downloaded. You can only use de-accession. Okay, so because it will not show me without logging in, and I let me see. Can you see my Dataverse screen, Miguel?
Yes, we're seeing what you're doing.
Okay, I'm going to publish because I don't want you to see some of the stuff in here, but so de-accessioned. The de-accession. Okay. De-accessioning rules are if a data set has been downloaded and then later the author comes and says, I have to remove this data set. You can only de-accession, you cannot delete it. That's against data sharing practice. You have to leave the citation page. Like this one, this data set has been transferred to another repository. It's not really, this person just did it wrong. It was put into a collection in Harvard Dataverse and they just didn't ask us to move it. So there's a lot of things that's always done wrong. But so that's what you would do. That's what you would do to a data set where the data set's restricted, the files are restricted, the person doesn't answer the email, the person is no longer around. If you cannot find them, you can de-accession the data set with the note that the data set was restricted for access and the depositor is no longer available for contact. You know why? Because when you have a de-accession data set, guess what? If the author ever comes back, the author can just revive it. They don't have to start over. They can just revive it. If they edit a file or upload a file or do anything, it brings it back to life.
Good.
So you don't want to delete it, but you do want to say to the person or to your users, this data set is not available because the data were restricted and the author is no longer available for communication.
Okay.
Sonia, can I ask you something? How I know when the data set has a restricted content?
Of course. So when you go to your Dataverse, you don't have to be logged in. Okay, I'm going to log out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's me clicking too fast. So if I go to my Dataverse, I'm not logged in. If I go to files, all right. If I click on the files facet,
Okay.
this is a very interesting data set, by the way. I have to tell you about it. This is done by an indigenous group, Miguel, around COVID.
Really? Oh,
If I show you the downloads on this data set, it's incredible. And they use their own metadata, indigenous groups. They use their own metadata icons. It's really fascinating.
Oh, wow.
So
What was the name of the database?
it's called Waste Models.
Waste Models. Okay.
I'll show it to you at some time. I'll share it with you guys so you guys can look at it. It's an amazing data set. So here's the thing. I go on Files, Rondinelli,
Mm-hmm.
and when I go down, it tells me public or restricted.
Okay.
And when I click on restricted, it's going to show me all the files with the red lock. If I'm logged in, the locks will be green. If I'm logged in as an administrator or I have access, the locks will be green. So it's going to show me that. And then if I come here, you know, the data set is locked. So this is one of the people I would contact every once a year and say, I need to make sure that your email is still valid because you have restricted data on our Dataverse installation. Especially because we don't retain copyright. When a depositor comes to the Harvard Dataverse, the data belongs to them. It never belongs to us.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot decide to make it available or to make it unavailable. Unavailable is easier if they violate something, but we cannot take a restricted data set and decide we're going to make it available without the author's permission.
Okay. The restricted content audit is made manually or
Manually.
automatic, yeah.
Manually. So what you would do is you would query your installation. You would query your installation for restricted files and then the email contact.
Okay.
So you'll get a spreadsheet with the data set that has the data set name that has restricted files, and then you would get the contact email that's put into that data set.
Okay.
And then you would use that contact email to generate communication through like MailChimp or MailMerge or something, and contact them and say, we need to validate that you are still have an active account for your restricted data.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah. And if they don't reply, you can take the time to go and see if they are still around and contact them at their new email. Because that's really what happens is people change emails and they forget. But if they cannot get in touch with you, you can also deaccession it until they get back and say, oh, I'm here. And say, you know, you have to be, because they are responsible for their content. You're responsible for migration, storing, preservation, but they are responsible for making sure they are there to make their data available.
Okay.
That's their job.
Thank you, Sonia.
Okay. So the other thing is for data sets requiring passcodes. So sometimes what happens is you come to a data set. It doesn't have a restricted. You're logged in as an administrator. But when you click on it, it asks you for a code, a passcode. Don't allow that in your repository. The person who deposits data in your repository should be using the feature that you allow. It should either be restrict the data or embargo the data, but they should not be putting in their own passcode that doesn't allow you as an administrator of your installation to view the data, because that means you don't have any control over that data. It interferes with preservation of the data. It interferes with migration of the data. It interferes with your ability to check the content of that data that's coming into your repository to make sure it doesn't have malicious content or identifiable content. So that may be something that maybe you didn't consider, but you do not want to allow that.
Well, I don't know. Arca Data Theo Cruz is saying yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I don't think that's right. It shouldn't be.
Can I... Posso explicar?
Por
Posso
favor.
explicar?
Sim, por favor.
Geralmente, quando acontece o embargo, né, é solicitado definido pelo próprio pesquisador. Esse embargo, pronto, está lá fechado e é feito contato com ele, se alguém quer aquele dado, por aí vai. Mas, em alguns momentos, o agência de financiamento, o editor da revista pede para visualizar o dado. Então, a gente dá uma senha temporária para visualização desse dado.
Okay. Do you understand?
Eu não compreendi bem a pergunta e respondi não, e agora entendi que era yes.
Não, por isso, estávamos falando exatamente sobre isso. As outras instalações falaram não, ou não está seguro, porque, eu tenho certeza, perdão, porque esse passcode, ele interfere na forma como esses dados vão poder ser acessados depois. Então, elas sugerem que não, que somente com o embargo e o require password, né, seria suficiente, mas não, mas você acabou de falar uma coisa importante, deixa eu falar para ela. Sonia, she said that sometimes they require the passcode when the financial support institution or editor wants to see the data. So that give it a temporary password. Is correct?
So she's not talking about passcode. She's talking, I think what she's talking about is permission on here. I'm talking about a file passcode.
Oh.
See, if this had a passcode, if it would not have this, it would not have this. What happens is if I click on this file, it would tell me, a box would show up saying, put in a password. That's different from a password on the Harvard Dataverse system. This password is controlled by the depositor outside of the Dataverse system.
Yes.
That's a problem. It's something that you want to be very careful with. Because if they're sharing data with you, something that's in a passcode, it's sufficient to use this right here. A passcode will interfere with your ability as an installation, as a repository, to migrate that data, to preserve that data. So just so you know that you can allow your financial institutions to do that, the financial ones that are depositing financial data and want to use the passcode, but it interferes with your repository management.
So
just remember that.
Miguel, você poderia me explicar? Fiquei com dúvida ainda.
Eu posso explicar, Miguel?
Por favor, Rodney.
É que geralmente os arquivos, por exemplo, Excel, Word, você consegue colocar uma senha de proteção do arquivo. Você não falando do Dataverse, né? Para você, por exemplo, geralmente quem trabalha com finanças coloca lá uma senha e proteger o arquivo. Então, qualquer pessoa que tenta acessar não vai conseguir. Ela está dizendo que, diferente disso aqui que é do bloqueio que é feito no Dataverse, mesmo que você deixe aberto, mas você está colocando uma senha dentro do arquivo, ele vai ter alguns problemas. Por exemplo, para preservação, você não vai conseguir preservar, e também para migração, porque é um arquivo que não está sendo público. Mesmo que ali não esteja aberto, alguém vai precisar de uma senha que somente uma pessoa que criou vai saber qual é. Então, tem que instruir quem for colocar o arquivo para não usar essa prática.
Ah, tá. Eu tinha compreendido que era para visualizar, se existia como eu falei anteriormente, um login, uma senha temporária que você deixa a pessoa visualizar e fechou. Depois ela não vê mais. Mas não é esse caso, agora eu entendi.
Não, não é esse caso.
Eu tinha entendido isso antes, fiquei confusa hoje, e agora eu vou colocar o correto, é no.
Yeah. Password on Dataverse, account on Dataverse is different. That's not what I'm talking. Yeah, it's different.
Ok.
If you ever allow a group, like a financial group at your institution, if they ever decide that they're going to passcode a file, not use restrict, but passcode, they need to know that that data is not going to be preserved and migrated well. That's their choice, but they need to know that it interferes with preservation of their content. It interferes with migration of their content to a better format.
Ou seja, você pode até deixar a pessoa fazer, mas tem que ser claro que ele está fazendo algo que pode interferir na migração ou na preservação.
Certo, ok.
Ok.
Muito bom. Excelente informação, muito importante.
Yeah.
Sim.
O que estamos pensando muito ainda a termos de instalação, né? E pensando a preservação depois. E isso depois vai dar uma confusão, porque vai entrar em rota de colisão, né?
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of different ways to put passwords in here. We have a few people who've put passcode content, and when we find it, it's not going to be, they have to take it out. It doesn't stay. Okay. Then, now, this is a lot. Okay. So, I'm just looking at this. Now, mind you, that we don't have a bit of information on here from some, but let's see. So nothing is being used yet. You know what's going to be great is to know what people want to use. We use archive metadata.
Yes.
We want to know, it's good for us to know what you want to use, because if you tell me that you want file previewer, or you want OAIH, or you want binder, or you want wholesale, why did I even put
yeah, there's not AWS in this integration.
Yeah,
because it's possible to put S3, the AWS S3. Série use S3 to storage the content.
Right. So I think this is more of the integrations outside of storage. It's not supposed to be, let me see. I'm gonna add
it's
that.
not the process to start, but to take the file to upload because Dropbox is only
right,
to,
right.
Yeah,
in
I
the
got
S3
it.
bucket, right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna add that to the end. So it looks like there's a lot of things that need to be done here. Are you sure Cielo doesn't have Data Explorer, Ronzanelli, or are you using?
What does that mean, Data Explorer?
Data Explorer is the data visualization tool from Scholar's portal. So there's 2 Data Explorer visualization tools that come with Dataverse right now. 2 Ravens and Data Explorer. So give me 1 second to get in here. So Data Explorer, I'm going to show you. So I'm going to go to public files. And I'm going to go to tabular files, because these are the ones that can be explored. Oh boy. Let's see. They have a guest book. So give me 1 second. Actually, let me find one that doesn't have the guest book. It's easier. Let me find a. Whatever I came up with has a lot of data sets. Okay. So this is a tabular file. This is the file preview tool. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a Data Explorer tool.
Okay, let me check if we have this one.
Every tabular file, if it says .tab, can be explored using the Data Explorer or the two Ravens. So Data Explorer is one, two Ravens is the other. And I have a link there that you guys can go to. Those are the two data analysis tools available to integrate with your installation.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this one, but I think we are using.
Yeah, especially if you have, I mean, you have to integrate the tool. So
Mm-hmm.
as long as you've integrated the tool, you might want to check if that's actually a no.
Também tenho a mesma dúvida do Rondinelli, não sei, vou procurar saber.
Yeah.
É.
Because that allows people to do the analysis directly on your installation. They don't have to download the file. They can do the analysis right here, you know, if they know what variables they're looking for. You know, they can do and run some analysis here. Two Ravens, this one allows for much more complicated analysis and visualization.
I mean, I'm seeing here, Sonia, in one article that is in a file. Show me again the button that you click to see the.
Sure. So if I come to a data set,
okay.
if I come to a data set and I see a file that ends with TAB. Okay. If I go right here and go to the very bottom, it's Data Explorer.
Okay.
Yeah, I see here. I don't think that there is this option because there's only file access, restricted access, original file format, tab delimited, R data format, variable metadata, data file citation. It's only thing that I saw in this file.
Right. But are you looking at a tab file? It has to end in
yeah,
TAB.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I tab,
So
yeah.
whenever you have a tab file, you should be able to use the Data Explorer if you have it. Or two Ravens if you have two Ravens.
Okay, it's an option that I have to enable in the Dataverse.
It's an integration.
Integration, okay.
So if you go to this spreadsheet, if you click on it, there's a link.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes you to Data Explorer, and it has the instructions for integrating.
Okay.
Two Ravens is the other one you can use, and there's also instructions.
Great. I go to check this option. If it's not integrated, I go to do it.
Okay. Yeah, you should definitely have that available.
So maybe this page we can change the question, or I mean the answer for yes we have, or no we want, something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can do that. You can do it in Portuguese. You can do it's a really good tool for you to see everything that's available. If you are like, if like Cielo is already at 5, you know, you're at 5.9, you should be using one of the Data Explorer tools. You should be using the features that are available for you. And it may just be that you just need, you might, like you said, like if you don't know, or it wasn't on your radar, then of course we get it on your radar. We put it, you know, make sure you know. So we use Wholetail. Wholetail is, again, for analysis. It's an analysis tool. You can use it with Jupyter, RStudio. for reproducible package information, okay? Curation is not on here, and it's because it's not integrated, but Curation is a company that does, they're an app that does replication verification. And Ron Dinelli, you might be interested because, for example, Political Analysis Journal, which is in Harvard Dataverse, they contract with Curation, and Curation does the reproducibility verification, then comes back and drops the data set, the reproducible package, into the Harvard Dataverse. They do that on behalf of the author. So the editors contract with them, but Wholetail is a tool that allows you to do the replication, verification, reproducibility directly on your installation.
Interesting.
So it's useful for journals. So the other thing, Binder, Renku, those are all options. Of course, there's a lot of information already here about whether you want to use it. OAI PMH harvesting is a great tool. I would think that if you guys could harvest between your Brazilian installations, that would be really a good thing to do. All the Dataverse installations have to do is make sure they have OAI PMH enabled. And then you guys could make the metadata discoverable between your different installations, which is a good way to build community and support each other. I leave that up to the installation to determine what they want to do.
For consortium, maybe?
Consortium or not consortium? Yeah, either way. It's really a decision about, what you want to see and support on your page. So when you come to the Harvard Dataverse, and you go to the harvested, we have 78,000 data sets that are harvested. We harvest from CIMMYT. And if I go to the CIMMYT harvested collection right here, 36, CIMMYT, CGIAR, Peru, Institute of Agricultural Research, Madroño. Some of them they're not all Dataverse installations, but we still harvest. John Hopkins is a Dataverse. But you see, we do ADP, NSTAR. So these are all other archives that we bring. It brings discoverability to those archives and to additional content to the installation, to our own installation. So Archivematica, you guys know about already. We use that too. DuraCloud File Previewer. I saw some of you guys were using, somebody said they were using File Previewer, but data curation tool. I think we tried it and we decided not to go with it.
That's something that some people on this webinar want to know more a little, maybe later.
Yep. So where do we have it? Let's see. So the data curation tool is here. It's for adding labels, groups, weights. We didn't find it to be useful for our use case, but the GitHub issue is here for the Dataverse curation tool. It's from Scholars Portal. Again, they're the same one. The Scholars Portal is the same one that creates Data Explorer, the visualization tool. So even if you need a demonstration, you would contact Scholars Portal. And if you need one of those, then I can always reach out to them and have them do a presentation for your group at another time. on the data curation tool. Okay, do we have questions on anything in the core features or data set features or file level features? Do we have more questions in here?
No, really. But I guess I remember in our agenda, we're going to discuss a little bit about data management plan.
Yes, so the data management plan is coming up.
Mhm.
Okay, so let me just let me stop sharing for 1 second.
Mhm.
So the data management talk is coming up at 1 o'clock.
Mhm.
Okay. We're going to be having a presentation on the integrated tool. And then you'll have an opportunity to ask some questions of Rory and Julie. For the Harvard Dataverse, we have, we have our support websites that offer, that offers, give me 1 second. I'm going to share this again. Let's see. Let me share this. So make sure I'm sharing the right page. Okay. So for the Harvard Dataverse, we have, it's under the Dataverse right now. We'll be moving some of this content to Harvard Dataverse based on the templates that we create. So we have some information on NIH, NSF, and NIJ. However, the Harvard Medical School, for example, has created a whole new DMP tool that they're using with the Harvard Medical School faculty and researchers. They've also, with the library, in collaboration with some of the staff at the Harvard Dataverse, they have created the template for the NIH 2023 DMP. Okay, so that template is being worked on. One of the bigger goals we have is with the NIH grant, where we're going to be doing training around data management, creating additional templates as needed to support the data, to support the researchers in developing their plan. But all of these need to be updated. And as you can see, the DMP tool is always there from the California Digital Library, but we have our own tool at the Harvard Medical School that we are going to be supporting and marketing and advertising for use. So, Miguel, may I have you open up the, you compiled the summary of the Google survey and their questions around data management tool, the DMP?
Okay, let me see. Well, but before that, they have two questions in our IKEA two for what I mean is one for Marcelo. Can you read it? Is the last one?
Yeah. Is RSpace already accessible plugin? Yeah. So if you come back to the integrations, RSpace is right here. It is already part of the electronic notebook for researchers. And then they're going to be talking about what you're going to get further from this is the information about how they're going to be using that for the data management plans. Okay. So it's already a tool that's available for, this is the RSpace demo and this is the Figshare, because Figshare can also configure with it. I want to say that in terms of how it supports DMPs, that should already be available, but I want to make sure, and Rory will be able to tell us during the talk, but it is already part of the tool base for Dataverse.
Okay, so do you want me to share the answers?
Yeah, because what I want to look at is the questions that they have on the data management plan.
Can you say it from there?
So you had a spreadsheet. It was the first spreadsheet. It was the first survey you did.
Oh, yeah, but I guess I don't have, I just have the answers like this way.
No, you sent it to me in a Google Doc.
Okay.
You definitely have it. I'm gonna see if I have it in the notes, but you definitely have it because you sent it to me in a Google document. So let me see if I have it.
Yeah.
Yep, I do. I have it.
Oh, thank you very much, because I'm lost.
No, that's okay. This is much easier to see. So let me share this because, oh, did somebody have another question?
All right.
Okay, so what we want is, so this is the survey that Miguel did with you guys, okay? Initially asking about which topics you guys wanted to cover. And so I wonder if this will let me sort.
So maybe.
I guess it's already sorted. So data management plans is what we're going to be concentrating on and how your questions are, right? So there are some general data management questions, obviously, that we can go through until we talk about the tool. All right, so we had the managing a self-curated repository model, which we did. So really we want to concentrate on these. All right, so one of the questions was, how can this technology help information professionals in different contexts? In which environments can it be applied? In university libraries, for example? Well, so that depends, right? What I find happens a lot with, and of course, this is getting a researcher to trust the librarian to help them fill out data management plans. Right? Researchers think that librarians don't know how to help with managing research data, but that's obviously not true. So one of the things you do is make sure that in your research data management guides in your library, that it's clear that you guys are there to help researchers fill out their data management plans. They need to see that on your library page, that's what you do. Around Harvard, all of the libraries have information on how they support data management plans. The libraries have that information. We have a best practice guide, but we don't advertise that we'll help you with the data management plan. The libraries do, okay? So anybody who, I think the biggest issue around data management plans is that the university as a whole works on it collaboratively. You don't want different data management plans unless you have, even if you have discipline specific, everybody who's supporting data management plans should be on the same page and understand what each group is doing around data management plans and have then one detailed data management plan that can be used for very general reasons. Okay, so with this NIH grant that we have, we know the library, we know the Harvard Library, one of the Harvard libraries, we know the Harvard Medical School, and we know my team are all tagged with doing data management plans. We're not going to do them separately. We're going to do them together. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. So when you ask, and I don't know if the person is here, but I think it's an undergraduate student who's now here. How can this new technology help information professional in different contexts? I wish they were here to just expand on their questions a little bit. But what I do know is that when you come together to talk about in a university to talk about data management plans, you come together as a working group that is dealing with data management plans. So everybody has the same understanding of what is being presented to researchers in one university community. Is it possible to integrate data management plans into a national repository? That's up to the repository and how much, I mean, you can make it that every deposit has to have a DMP deposited with it, every data set. That could be a requirement. Now, that may come up as a blocker or make your deposits slower. But at the same time, if you get a DMP, you know, it's just, it's one of the things that I call it's a higher integrity. It's another checkbox of integrity in your deposit, right? Like we like to have deposits that have data and documentation and code. Those are at the highest. The ones that just do data without documentation and code, well, they're not doing so well, right? They don't do the best. So you decide if it's going to work well for the researchers that you support, right? Are they all able to do a DMP? Maybe you just make it that they all have to have, all the researchers who want to deposit in your installation have to have a consultation with a library member to help them through their data management plans, if they plan to deposit in the future or whenever you catch them. It's very hard to catch people in the beginning of their research projects these days, but if you do, you get a very well planned out DMP. So it's always possible. It's how much effort you want to put into it. How can open science be expanded by recording the steps of digital preservation documented in data management plan? That might be beyond my, that's beyond my level of work and how I don't know. You know, that's again, the conversations that working groups around DMPs have to make it more of an accepted standard that comes along with the data set deposit and data set sharing. That's a broad question. Where to start for the elaboration? Is the composition of a multidisciplinary team necessary? So what I just said previously about having a working group across the university libraries that deals with DMPs, to me, that speaks to the multidisciplinary teams, right? When you have people from the Harvard Medical School, people from the business school, people from the public school of public health that are coming together and saying, no, this is what the DMP needs to have in it in order for it to be inclusive of everyone. If we're going to use one DMP, then yeah, you do need a multidisciplinary team because each of the disciplines and domains have different expectations of what should be included in a DMP. You can always have a general DMP. You can have very specific DMPs. Each of the organizations I know that I work with here, they have some expectation of their department on what needs to be included in a DMP. So having a multidisciplinary team, having digital humanities participate in that, I think it's important. Chemistry department has a whole different list of things that are required, right? Astrophysics is going to have the same thing. And then what are the minimum criteria for metadata to be adopted? What do you recommend as best practice for a university institutional repository? I'm not sure what the question is. Metadata standards, you know, that's something you have to go to the community for to see what it's not an easy process to see what they accept. I mean, we create custom metadata blocks, and the way we create custom metadata blocks for a discipline that we don't have an existing metadata block for is we use the highest level metadata possible so that other people can use it. We try not to narrow a metadata block only to a specific group. So if a group comes to us from, you know, for example, chemistry, they're still discussing what a accepted metadata block standard should include. We go with a high level metadata block so that it's general enough to be used by everybody. How it gets accepted, that's a different, that's, you know, the chemistry community makes that decision. The agricultural community made that decision. social science community made that decision, right? Along with, data documentation initiative, data site, Force 11, all of those groups that work around standards are the ones that finally come to a consensus and say, this is what was accepted by the community for now. I don't understand what the best practices for university institutional repository is for data management plan. I think that's what they're asking. What do you recommend? Again, the way we do it at Harvard is we come together with the existing DMPs. Some of these granting agencies all have requirements around their DMP templates, and then you have to build around those requirements. You're forced to build around those requirements. You can't just build your own. So if somebody's doing an NIH grant funded project DMP, it has to include what NIH is asking for. The same thing with NSF. That kind of makes it a little easier. But we know that for the Harvard Medical School, they have to fill out a data management plan. Not everybody has one that comes to the Harvard Dataverse, of course, right? But we want them to do things correctly by standards. And so the Harvard Medical School does a lot of work in advertising and training around the DMP for that purpose to their researchers. Okay, so this chart, we don't have answers in here, but this thing is still recording, which is good. I don't know if, I don't think Julie and them have signed on yet, but they should be on soon. So this is an opportunity for a quick break, but we are going to start promptly at 1 o'clock with this demonstration. Okay, and Miguel, did you give them the video? Did you also include the video? Okay, because the video has one version.
With the Zoom password, and some of them they already saw it. So watch it. So
okay, great. So what we'll do is take a little break. We will come back to that presentation. We'll do some questions if you have some questions around the tool. I think we can do more around data management plans for another webinar as well. We have some people on our list that were not invited to present for this one, for the data management, but they can present at a later time. So we will keep that in mind along with the paid curation services talk webinar around how to develop paid curation services. Data management plan is something we can continue on. And then again, this spreadsheet though that you guys are doing is very important for me to be able to go back to GDCC, the Global Dataverse Community Consortium, and talk about the needs of your institutional dataverses. Okay, so encourage your other managers from the other installations to fill this out and fill it out well, so that we can have the proper answers and know what areas we need help with. Okay?
Yes, true.
All right,
so 15
take
minutes.
a break. Be back at like 12:59, so we can start on time. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna pause the recording, and we'll just need to remember to turn it back on.
Sure, I will.
I had paused. So the particular focus of the RSpace integration is with data repositories, including Dataverse and Figshare, enabling data produced in the active research phases to be seamlessly transferred to repositories like these and made available for public sharing and query in line with FAIR principles. They work closely with data librarians and research data managers in introducing RSpace to university research communities and exploring ways in which it can work and complement other research resources. Now, Rory, I'm going to ask you to introduce your colleague, Rob.
Great. Well, thank you, Sonia. And hi, everyone. Thank you for the nice introduction. Yes, so my colleague, Rob, I have the pleasure and the honor of introducing. Rob and I work closely together here at ResearchBase. And Rob, I would say, is going to give you an RSpace demo today. And you're lucky to see it because I would say Rob probably knows more about the product, both from a development point of view, because he's deeply involved in guiding the ongoing development of RSpace, as well as in a usage view, because he's the person who engages with our customers. So he has a very broad perspective on our space, from kind of a strategic perspective, from a user perspective, as well as from a product development perspective. And Rob also has been involved with people with Julie on the Harvard side and with others on the Dataverse side for many years. So it's a real pleasure for both of us to be here today.
Thank you, Rory. Hello,
So-
everyone.
Yes, welcome, Rob. And so thank you very much. And you guys can start whenever you're ready.
I thought Julie was going to start.
Okay.
Is
Yeah.
that? I think that was the plan. If that's okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so is it possible to share my slides, Sonia?
Yes, I made you a panelist, but it doesn't make you a co-host. So I'm doing that now.
Okay.
That's so interesting. Okay. See if you're all ready to share.
It still says I don't, never mind, here we go.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay, awesome. So let me get my slides set up, everyone. All right, fabulous. Great. Well, thanks to Sonia for the awesome introduction. And hi, everyone. My name is Julie Goldman. I'm a research data services librarian. And then along with Rory and Rob, we're here to talk about interoperable tools for data management. So we're really happy to get this invitation to speak at your community at the Brazil Dataverse community meeting. So a quick little agenda we have planned for this hour is we just had our introductions. I am going to walk through some research workflows on why data management is so important. And then we'll get into some tool integrations, which really support the data management and data sharing. And then Rory and specifically Rob will give a really great demo and overview a little bit deeper into the RSpace platform. And then hopefully we'll have plenty of time to answer your questions and have a little discussion. All right, so to start, we really wanted to frame today's conversation around the idea of streamlining research workflows across the life cycle. And I'm sure you've seen a view of the research or the data life cycle, whatever you want to call it. The view of the data life cycle on the slide is one that we created here at Harvard to really show how data moves through a research project and the steps involved with managing data. We also like to show how multiple tools and software researchers use throughout the project can link and work together to really enhance the efficiency of that research work. So taking you quickly through this picture will hopefully illustrate how the platform RSpace is an option for connecting different processes throughout a project. And if you have not heard of some of the tools that I mentioned, we will be reviewing them individually. So first in the upper right-hand corner, you should start by planning and designing a research project and specifically create a data management plan with DMP tool or a similar platform. When working with data and metadata can be captured or created in electronic lab notebooks or digital notebook spaces like RSpace. RSpace is also nice, as we will talk about, that it connects to other documentation platforms, including protocols.io for methods, research methods, collaborative and analysis tools like GitHub and Jupyter notebooks for working with your data. Later stages in the life cycle, kind of shown on the left-hand side, include that sharing and archiving activities, including sending curated collections to preservation repositories, publishing results and citing all related project outputs like that data management plan, methods, protocols, data sets, code, etc. And then finally, the goal of managing data throughout this life cycle is to really ensure that research products, all of our outputs, meet fair data principles, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So I just want to quickly break down some of the tools and specifically talk about some of the support we offer at Harvard. So DMP Tool is a free tool that helps researchers create data management plans that fulfill the requirements of different funders, specifically US based funders. Harvard Library provides or offers support for DMP Tool. We also offer data management plan review and consultation services. We have a group of multiple research stakeholders, a data management working group. We have created templates that include example texts and links to our institutional policies and resources to really ensure that our researchers are creating plans that align with the types of data they're working with and their institutional policies. So the templates we've created, they're available to anyone who logs into the platform using our Harvard University credentials. And one of the US major funders, the National Institutes of Health, recently announced a new policy for data management and sharing plans. So we think our templates that we've created will really help researchers comply with those funding requirements, especially being located at a medical school. This new requirement, this new policy will really impact a lot of our researchers here. I just want to mention that there are other data management plan creating platforms like DMP Online in other countries to help researchers create good data management plans. I won't talk about too much about our space since Roy and Rob are really here to do that. But I do want to talk about, our work here at Harvard related to our space. So Harvard has recently started a pilot with our space. Harvard University's Our Space service is a collaboration between a few units, including the library, information technology, and our research computing. And if you're not familiar with ELNs or electronic lab notebooks, they have become a standard in research labs, and they can serve as a centralized and structured data management system. So our space specifically enables researchers to work together in a way that is streamlined and secure. I mentioned our space connects to those other research tools researchers may be using. And we have, taken advantage of that and integrated our space into many of our systems at Harvard, just to make that research process even more streamlined and efficient. I have listed some of the key features we think our space enhances research workflows. And Rob may talk a little bit more about these, but the ones I want to highlight is the fact that we can add data management plans directly from DMP tool into a notebook gallery space. So this obviously allows the research project members to have access to that data management plan, reference it, follow it as they need. And then also the fact that we can export data in a variety of formats from our space directly into the Harvard Dataverse Repository. Again, that just enhances a researcher's workflow when they need to share data. So that brings me into our last service, which is the Dataverse Repository. Harvard Dataverse is a collaboration between IQSS, so work closely with Sonia, the Harvard Library, Information Technology, other Dataverse team, and the Office of Vice Provost for Research. So it's a really, broad university service we are offering. Sonia can obviously talk more about this, but we have spun up curation services really to ensure that last point in our life cycle, ensuring that data sets are meeting these FAIR principles. And I will show how these tools interact with each other, specifically how we can associate a data management plan to an exported data set in Dataverse, and then how that data set will be then connected to the data management plan along with all the other project outputs. So what I really want to show today is a nice demo video of how these three tools, the DMP tool, RSpace, and Dataverse work together. So I'm going to play this video, and fingers crossed that the audio pulls through. Here is a quick overview of the DMP tool RSpace integration, which facilitates linking together a data management plan and project outputs with minimal effort. Here I have my list of DMPs in DMP tool, and I am recording my research and storing the data in RSpace. I can easily set up the Dataverse and DMP tool integrations on the apps page, enabling RSpace to directly communicate with these services. I can then browse DMPs inside of RSpace. I can filter by my DMPs and public DMPs, and can select which DMP to import. Importing into RSpace will store the DMP as a PDF inside of a separate DMP gallery, which I can easily view, as well as reference and link to within RSpace. Now, here is my research data for this project. I am ready to export my work. This is a straightforward process within RSpace, as I can directly export to an external repository such as Dataverse. I will make an HTML export and provide the information Dataverse requires, being sure to associate this export with the appropriate DMP. After the deposit is confirmed, I can view all of the research data in Dataverse. Most importantly, a direct link to the exported materials on Dataverse is then passed back to the original DMP in DMP tool as a unique and permanent related identifier, which supports traceability and FAIR data. This identifier is also recorded on the landing page for the DMP. This landing page serves as a public-facing page listing all outputs related to this specific project. As additional data sets are published, these citations will be automatically added to the landing page, keeping the research materials and data management plan in sync throughout the research process. Great, so I hope that little video was a way to really visualize how these tools can really work together to streamline data planning, data collection, and data sharing. So having, the data management plan tied to the data set in Dataverse really removes a lot of the barriers for researchers to efficiently and seamlessly connect all of their research products together. So I'm really happy to, support these three tools here at Harvard. And yeah, we're looking forward to, building these integrations out further, make them more interoperable moving forward. So great. That ends kind of my section of today's talk. So I think I'm going to turn it over to probably Rob and Roy to give a little bit more about our space.
Thank you, Julie.
Stop sharing.
Okay, so now hopefully you can see my browser moving left to right. Can people see that?
All good.
Outstanding. So thank you, Julie. That was absolutely outstanding. And I really enjoyed that video. Actually, it was very nicely done to show the current workflow as exists between DMP, RSpace, and Dataverse. But there are lots of other things that RSpace can link to, and we can act as a really important central organizational hub for your lab that can be involved in recording both your workflows and your procedures, allowing you to more efficiently share and distribute those workflows as templates around your colleagues, collaborate on all sorts of projects internally within RSpace, but also show how your work is related to things like the data files that you produce, both the small and medium data files that are stored inside RSpace itself, and also larger files, things like next generation sequencing data, flow cytometry files, high resolution images, the sorts of things that you may be storing externally in your local SMB or SFTP file stores, or perhaps in other storage facilities that RSpace can link to. So right here, what you're seeing is a demonstration server of RSpace that I've already logged into. If you're interested in trying RSpace yourself and you don't have access to the version that's available in Harvard, you're actually more than welcome to go ahead and create an account for yourself at community.researchbase.com. And you can go ahead and log in here and try this for yourself on our free public community server. We have over 10,000 registered users on this server. At any time now, you'll be sharing this server with hundreds of other scientists all over the world who are working on recording their data here as a way to either have a low-cost data management solution that doesn't cost them anything, or to try RSpace in advance of purchasing it for themselves. On this demonstration server of RSpace Enterprise Edition, I've already logged in. And when I log into RSpace, the first place I'm brought to is this tab called the Workspace. So the Workspace is sort of analogous to the desktop of your computer. And this is where you can see documents that you're creating that describe your research or that represent your common workflows, protocols, procedures, or day-to-day activities. These different documents can be organized either hierarchically inside folders if you want to, like this one. So I can open up a folder here by clicking on it, and that will show me the contents of that folder. And you can see in there I may have subfolders that I can tunnel down into. The breadcrumb trail here always shows me where I am in my hierarchy. And at any time I can click the Workspace tab or the Home button here to go back to the top level of my Workspace directory. I can also organize my document into what's called notebooks. And notebooks are designed to be a narrative description of the activities that you perform in your lab. Inside notebooks, documents are always organized in a linear, flat, chronological sequence. This is designed to tell the story of your activities over time in such a way that will be easier for people who follow you to recreate this story and understand exactly what you did and the sequence of events that you performed in the order in which you performed them. So notebooks contain documents arranged in a flat chronological sequence, but folders allow you to hierarchically organize those documents any way you want. And you can also mix and match between these two as well. So for example, I could go to a notebook. I could look at a particular document inside a notebook. And then if I want to, I can navigate through the pages by using these arrows to slide through the different pages of my notebook. Or I can click on a page I'd like to jump to go straight to that page. Inside that page, there may be references to other things that are outside of this particular RSpace document. And it's incredibly easy in RSpace to link to many other kinds of resources. As Julie showed, we can bring in things like DMP, data management plans from external services, but we can also link to anything else that you want inside or outside of RSpace. I can easily select some text and I could just go ahead and edit this document and associate a standard URL with that text if I wanted to. or I can use this internal linking tool to either browse to items that I'm interested in linking to, or I can search for particular items that are already in RSpace. I also have the option to do this other thing here. It's kind of fun. I can say, here is a related folder. And now if I want to, I can open this navigational tree on the left, grab a relevant folder and just drag and drop it onto the page to instantly create a smart link to something else somewhere else inside RSpace. So I can mix and match between notebooks and folders in such a way that it's not necessarily necessary for me to cram absolutely all of my research data into a single document. I can easily link to more verbose data sets outside of this document so that I don't break up the flow of the narrative of the way that I'm describing what I did in my day-to-day lab. This is one of the many advantages of working with an ELN. By being able to link to all sorts of data, you're able to create a record that's much more comprehensible, but yet also much more comprehensive than working with paper. You no longer have to worry about trying to print things out on paper, make reproduced images of things, and then tape them or stuff them into your notebook somehow, or use paper clips to hold random bits of data in place in a paper notebook. If you're working with the ELN, it's really easy to record everything in a purely digital way, show how different items are related to each other, and also you have the convenience of being able to use this system with any device that you like, either a workstation, but you can also use the exact same interface with your mobile devices. Things like your Android or your iPad are all very nicely supported in RSpace. And in fact, that's why we use, for example, these select boxes to select things, so that I can select items by clicking, or on a mobile device tapping on the select box. And that will reveal for me a list of actions that I can perform on the selected item by clicking or tapping these action buttons. So once I've selected something in the workspace, I could duplicate it, I could move it to a new location in my hierarchy, I can rename it or delete it, but if I delete it, it never really goes away from the server. I can always restore it later if I want to examine it. I can easily get data out in my choice of formats using this universal export engine. And as Julie's demonstrated, we can either use this to deliver files to your local computer, or if you want to, you can seamlessly export things directly to repositories that you work with so that you can manage your data from bench all the way up to repository and beyond. You can see all the revisions of a document that you've worked with. If you've been working with a complex document that has lots of revisions, you'll see that when I select it and say revisions, we'll get a long revision history that shows every single version of this document that I've ever worked on. If I want to, I can go back and look at the older versions, or I can look at the current versions. You'll also notice that when I'm looking at these documents here, I can anytime grab this all-important unique identifier here. I can copy that, and then I can use that unique identifier easily inside other documents, either inside or outside of RSpace. So I could paste that into this text file, make it a bit bigger so you can see it. And this particular link always points specifically at version 36 of this particular document. And as a user, I can choose whether or not I want to use these static version links that point at particular versions of documents, or I could just as easily choose to use what's called the live link, which I can copy here. And this one is always going to point at the very latest version of the document. It will automatically always update to point at the latest version. We don't have time today to spend an enormous amount of time talking about content creation, but I'll just show you an example of some of the sorts of rich content you can make in a typical RSpace document. Certainly, you can work with any kind of text, and you can make a rich style text any way you want. You can build or you can copy and paste in tables from external sources. You can work with chemistry structures that you can then edit or view at any time. And you can also go ahead and modify these if you want to by, maybe in this case, I'll zoom in on this, and I'll just go ahead and I'll move this to new orientation. And perhaps I'll change one of these chlorine molecules to a bromine by simply doing something like this to make a probably completely physically impossible compound. I really don't know. And now I can say insert to return that back to my page again if I wanted to. Notice that when I do that, the system automatically generates all this handy chemical metadata related to that particular chemical structure. And there are lots of other chemistry features we support too as well for chemists who are here today. I can also go ahead and create calculations that I can then use in my system very easily. And what's nice about these calculations is that they can be then stored as what's called snippets. So if this were a calculation that I did often, I could use the snippet function to save that or any other type of content that I use frequently and then redeploy it. So here's how easy that is today to do. Imagine that calculation that I just deleted was a calculation that I do 4 or 5 or 20 times a day. I can go ahead and say insert from gallery. And from here, I can go to my snippets area to access a library of all sorts of different sorts of content that I like to use often. And one of the things I've done is I've made a subfolder with some calculations already in it. I can go to that folder. I can choose my favorite summing calculation and say insert, drop it back on the page. This is a live calculation now, where if I want to, I can make changes to the values that are in here to calculate a new grand total and say insert. So the snippets gallery is incredibly useful for being able to quickly and instantly reintroduce content that you use frequently, and to build a library of your preferred content that you often use, things like blocks of texts, tables, images, attached files and documents of all kinds that you use often, so you can instantly deploy those to your documents if you need to. We also support a fully equipped LaTeX editor for creating publication-ready mathematical expressions. You can drop in code snippets to show, in this case, this is a little bit of LaTeX code, but I can just as easily have dropped in R or Python or something that I'm using for my data analyses. And you'll see that when I save this page, RSpace marks up this code in some way that would be informational to people who know more about this particular code language than I do. We can also show comments, strings of comments that can be turned into threaded discussions where people who have access to this page can discuss the work. And then here we have examples of how I can link to anything and everything, either outside of RSpace. For example, I can easily put in simple URLs that point at other external resources, or I could go ahead and I can link to other resources in RSpace, and I can either click on the link to jump straight to that resource, or if I just need to get a sense of what was in that page, I actually don't necessarily have to actually go visit that page if I don't want to. One of the things that I could do is I could just look at a preview of that page that's embedded in the link itself. So here, for example, if I put this back in view mode and I look at some of those links, I can click on the little info button, and that will give me information about that item. And if it's an individual document, I'll even see a little preview of that document, so I have a sense of what's in there before I actually visit it. So these are actually preview images of the document itself that I can see right within the information for that document. I can also link to other kinds of external resources. In this case, I've linked to a file that's in Dropbox using our integration with Dropbox, or I could link to larger files that are held in nearby local SMB or SFTP file stores. So certainly, if I were working with an image and I'd like to see a copy of it in RSpace, if I want to, I can just simply drag and drop that image onto RSpace. So if I go to my local computer and I grab an image from my local machine, perhaps something like this image here, I can drag and drop this image into RSpace and it will be immediately available to me there. And then in addition to displaying in the document, that file that I just added is also stored safely and securely in our file storage area, which is called the gallery. So the gallery is where you can store any and all of your files, and then you can choose to use those files inside your documents, either by dragging the file directly to the document or by adding it there from the gallery like this. I could say insert from gallery. I can choose an image from my gallery and say insert and just drop that image onto the page. I also have the ability to be able to link to other kinds of file types like MS Word files, Excel files, more specialized file types if I want. And in many cases, we can easily and quickly display the content of those attached files to the user. So for example, in the case of these Word files, I can see a small thumbnail of it. I can see a larger thumbnail of it. Or if I want to, I can view it in high resolution in a separate tab so I can read the document easily. Or I can just choose to open it up in MS Office Online if that's what I want to do. I can also edit this within MS Office Online and return the results back to RSpace. Or I can edit this file by using a download, edit, upload method that will go ahead and add the file as a new version, overwriting the old one that's associated with this document. I can put in chemistry structures if I want to and draw them in situ using our built-in chemistry tool. And I can even do things like drop in references to, in this case, this last example actually uses our most recent integration where what I've done here is I've dropped in a reference to a specific booking event of a microscope that I need to access for my research. And this essentially is a table that was generated from a third-party tool called Cluster Market that handles all of your equipment reservations. So you can go ahead and insert these reservations into your page as tables so that you can associate the booking event and access to the equipment that you need with the experimental write-up that you're recording in your ELM. In addition to working with files and workflows and being able to turn these workflows into templates, which I can then distribute to my lab so that we all do things the same way, I also have the ability to manage my inventory from within RSpace. So RSpace now features a modern, full-featured, highly intuitive sample and inventory management system that's extremely flexible, and it can be used for managing any large set of real or conceptual items that you often use in your lab. The inventory system is divided into 3 panels. We have a sidebar, a navigational panel, and a details panel. Items that I select in the navigational panel are automatically displayed for me in the details area. And if I select one of my larger containers here, I can see that this is a room. And if I click on the image of this room, I'll see a little preview of that. And if I go to the bottom, I can see there are a couple of freezers in that room. I could click on one of those links to visit that freezer. And again, see a slightly larger preview of that freezer if I want to. And inside that, I can see that there are different sorts of items and boxes held inside the freezer. So RSpace is highly hierarchic in the way it stores your items, just like the way you store them in the real world. I can go back to my containers area, and I could say I'd like to look at one of my main rooms. This type of room is set up to be what's called an image container. And image containers allow us to take a photograph of the container and then map onto it live pictures showing what's in them. So for example, I can see that in this cupboard, if I open this, I'll see that inside that cupboard, I have some a cardboard box and a slide box and something else. I'll go ahead and look at this slide box. I can see an image of the slide box, and I can see that I have a number of sections inside that slide box. If I click on one of these links of one of the sections, I'll be able to see the section itself. And then here I have a collection of highly configurable, customizable metadata that describes everything I need to know about that particular sample. Best of all, I can easily show how I'm using samples inside RSpace. So there are actually a couple of ways that you can do that, but I'm going to highlight just one today. If I go back to one of my documents that I was working with earlier, and I need to show my downstream audience exactly what list of materials I'll be using in this experiment today, I can go ahead and click on this icon here to generate what's called a list of materials. And the list of materials is drawn from the inventory system. So let's go ahead and we'll give this a name. We'll say this is something to do with my liver samples. And for brevity, I'll just use the same thing as the description. Now I can say add items. Now, if I happen to know where these items are, I could switch into what's called tree view, and I could actually tunnel down into my various different containers and look inside a particular room or inside a particular freezer and find the samples that I'm looking for. But if I don't really have any clue where they are, then I can actually go back to list view, and I can just say, I want to do a search for some particular types of samples. I'm going to say I'm looking for liver samples, and I want these specifically to be subsamples. And I only want to limit this to items that I personally own. So now I can see a number of different search results here. And all of these look like they might be something that I'm using here. So actually, I'm just going to select all of them in one click. And now I'm going to say choose. And that's going to generate this list of materials for me. And when I look through the volumes of these, I can see one of them is a bit low. It's only got 150 microliters left. So I'm going to eliminate that one from my list. And then of the ones that are left, if I want to, I can say that I'm going to use 100 microliters of each of these samples. So I'm going to copy this. And for each of these, I'm going to tell the system that I want to use 100 microliters. And you'll notice that in each case, as I adjust the volume that I'm going to be using in this experiment, the system will automatically decrement the remaining volume in my inventory system to show me how much is left. If these items were not already all on my bench, if I wanted to, one of the things I could do is I could move the whole lot from their existing location onto my bench to show that I'm using them in an experiment. But for now, these items are actually already on my bench, so I don't need to do that. I'll just go ahead and save this now. And so now that list of materials is associated with this step in this particular experiment. You can see I have two different lists of materials associated with this experiment now, and I could make more if I wanted to. So now if I need to maybe print out this document, and perhaps particularly if I'm interested in seeing that inventory list, I can go ahead and click the print button here, and I can either send this to a local printer, or in this case, I'll save it as a PDF so that you'll be able to see it, and I'll save it to my local desktop. And then when I do that, I can then access that PDF on my desktop. So here's the document as it is printed out as a PDF with all that rich content that we've previously created, including equations, code snippets, linked to other things inside and outside of our space, images and other things. And then finally at the bottom as an appendix, you'll actually see my lists of materials. So here's the first list and here is the second list. And because this is a PDF, as it happens, all of these links are all still live. So if I need to know more about this particular subsample, I can go ahead and just click the link and I'll be taken straight back to the inventory system to be able to see exactly all the details that I need to know about that item. And I can even see where it is currently. This particular one's on the bench. If I'm interested though, I may be able to find out whether or not this item had a previous location. And actually it does. Before it was on my bench, it was in this box here called box containing a list of items. And if I wanted to, if I've decided I don't want to use this particular sample in my experiment after all, I could actually go ahead and select it here and I can say move. And I can say I want to move it back to where it was before, which was a box. I'll just do a search for box initially. And I'll say I'm looking for things that are owned by me. And here's the box that I'm looking for that this item used to be into. I can select it and I can say move, and it will move it back to that location exactly where it used to be. And here it is here, in fact, now. So you have tremendous ability to be able to organize things. You can also go ahead and if you are really interested in the location within things like grid containers, which is very common inside in the life sciences, one of the things I can do here is I could maybe look inside a particular no, not that one. I could look inside a particular freezer room. And then from here, I can look in a freezer. And then from here, I can look in a freezer box. And this particular freezer box is an example of what's called a grid container. And you can see in grid containers, we actually show the exact location of where all of the samples are within the context of that freezer box. So containers can be set up to either be a simple list of items, or they can be set up to show the exact location using an image with hotspots over the top of that image to show the location, or they can be set up to be a grid, as is the case with this one. And this gives you enormous flexibility to be able to create samples any way you want. You can also get started quickly using this system because you can import batches of samples using CSV files using the import mechanism. And then you can organize these any way that you want. And the system is also designed to be highly mobile friendly so that if I am working with a mobile device, I will see at any time just one of these three panels. This is what I would see on my phone if I were working with it. And then from here, I can actually easily go back to the navigational tree and perhaps select something else to see the details for that item, and then go back to the navigational tree again. So this is what you would see on your phone. And because we support mobile devices very nicely, what you can then do here is if you need to replace one of these images with a more realistic image of your actual container or sample, you can say edit, and then you can click or tap replace image. And on a computer, that will let you choose an image, but on a mobile device, it'll actually fire up your camera so that you can take a photograph of whatever's right in front of you. And the idea here is that our space is designed to be highly visual, because when humans are looking for things in the real world, they generally do so using a built-in internal visual map and a recognition pattern that they already have where they're looking to recognize an item that they've worked with before. And that's why we've optimized our space for taking images using things like mobile devices. On most of this demo server, a lot of these images are simply clip art. But in a real lab, we would always recommend you take photographs of your containers and samples so that you can see exactly what you're looking for and you'll recognize it right away. Okay, so there's 1,000,010 other features I could show you about the about RSpace ELN, but we don't really have an enormous amount of time today, so I think I'll just probably stop it there. And we will pause now for questions, I think.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, that was really in-depth. That was fascinating to watch. I'm not sure if we have any questions from the community.
No,
It
yet.
might be. Go ahead, Miguel.
No, everybody's saying that they're very pleased with the RS space. They're fascinated too.
Yeah, I think the information, especially because I think this is their first introduction, where some of us have watched your video a few times and we've heard the talk a few times. This is really their first introduction to a demo And so we will be translating all of this as well for them because it's being recorded for translation. And I'm almost certain that might be a need for another demo when we do another webinar series with this group, because they're going to have questions.
I absolutely anticipated that that was likely, because RSpace is a very feature-rich product that can do many, many different things for your lab. You're all more than welcome to either contact me directly to set up additional webcasts, or as we said earlier, Sonia might want to also schedule additional follow-up webcasts through this specific medium, so that Harvard is sort of aware of all the webcasts that I've done to these users.
Right.
I would add that RSpace actually is a lot simpler to use than I make it sound in this demo, because actually, of course, I'm showing you features that you won't necessarily use every day. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if you can use a text editor to simply type what you're doing in a document, and you can drag and drop your data files onto that document, then you are ready to use RSpace. Fundamentally, it's very simple to use. You just open a basic document, you start typing, describe what you're doing, and then if you want to, you drag and drop in the files that you need to show your downstream audience, like, for example, your protocols that perhaps you're already storing outside of RSpace. And if you need to bring in a protocol, you can just grab one from your local computer and drag and drop it onto the page. And that's it. That's really all there is to RSpace at the end of the day. Typing and dragging and dropping files is the core of what we do here. But if you need more information about any of the more advanced features, we have outstanding documentation. So you can go to the documentation area and you can click, for example, getting started with RSpace. And then from here, you can go ahead and put that in a full screen mode. You can work through the different steps here that will show you how to get started using the system. But if you're interested in working with specific features, let's imagine you'd like to know more about digital signing and how that works in RSpace. You can go ahead and look up signing using the search engine and just go straight to a particular page that interests you to see everything you're likely to need to know about working with the system. We're very proud of this documentation. We have good reason for making sure that it's accurate and simple and up to date and comprehensible, because the most important consumers of this information is actually ourselves. We have a distributed team who are scattered all over the world. And so we keep the documentation accurate and up to date because we all need to use it ourselves in order to all stay attuned to what the new features are in each new release. RSpace is being developed very quickly, and there are new features that come out every few weeks. If you need to know more about what the latest features are, you can always go to our continuously updated change log that shows you all of the new features in the most recent release. And you can actually go backwards in time through these. If you went all the way back to the very earliest days of RSpace, this list would probably actually include a full list of almost every feature we've ever built in the system. So it sort of does double duty as a feature list.
So, yeah, Sonia and Miguel, would you be able to just to help us also in thinking about how we might be able to work together going forward? Would you be able to tell us a little bit about, you know, the background to the Brazil group's interest in usage of, first of all, just of Dataverse, and then of other tools like RSpace, and also who's in the meeting today? What kind of people are interested in attending?
Sonia, I guess you can do the translation better than me.
Sure, no, I can. It's fine. So we have at least 5 repository managers in this group today, and some of them are developing their user community for their Dataverse. Some of them have an existing user community, but one of the things that we're trying to do is get them to utilize more of the integrated tools. And part of the reason that some of that hasn't been done is because they still need the support for it. So part of the reason for this webinar today was to assess their needs for support in integrating tools, and see what we can provide through the GDCC. And of course, with groups like yours, right, is to make them aware of the available tools so that they can know what they can bring back to their community. Because I'm sure they do have a community that's going to need RSpace. And if they knew that RSpace was there, they would be willing to share their data and share their data better.
Fantastic. Yeah,
so this was the first webinar, was mostly this group. This next webinar we have in April and May, we're going to have actual researchers and students, graduate students, and the user community.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. And we're certainly, very keen to to work with you, Sonia, and to learn more about what the community needs and to provide support for integration, understanding integrations with our space, but more generally, the whole issue of how you can use tools together, which is becoming I think it's becoming a much more important topic than even it was a few years ago. So.
Right. And they did have a lot of questions around the data management plan. So I thought this would be perfect for them to know about in terms of how to support it with our space and Dataverse together. So I think this is useful information. I think we will have a lot of questions once the translation is provided for them. And so this is something, this webinar series a couple of times a year is something that I plan to keep doing with them because they have quite a number of installations of Dataverse in Brazil. And so I want to make sure that they stay on top of the tools that are coming and the tools that are available. So we will be doing this again with you. So, so that you keep that in mind, because I'm going to keep you guys on my schedule, on my plans as well for further demos. So this was great. I appreciate it. And thank you very much for your time.
Yes. Thank you very much. It's been very helpful.
Thank you, Julie, for coming on board.
One last link that I'll drop into the chat that might be helpful for you is I'm putting a link in there to the page that deals specifically with working with some of the third-party applications that we integrate with.
Okay.
And so if that's something that you haven't thought of before, then it might be useful for you, things that you could potentially integrate with our space. Even if you're not using them now, you might consider using them just because they'll add additional great functionality to the system itself. Things like Slack and Teams for communication and other kinds of tools that are very common these days, but perhaps you hadn't yet considered using them in your lab.
Right. And we actually do have one question in there, Miguel, in the QA.
Oh, let me see.
From Igor.
Let's say is the process of to do the integration between our space and the Dataverse is really easy and intuitive, or it requires advanced knowledge to do that?
Advanced development knowledge.
So there are two types of integrations that we support. The first ones are very easy to work with, and they work out of the box. And they specifically are all the ones that are listed here. Generally, the only type of integration you usually need with these is to turn it on or turn it off. And that's basically it. However, if you want to build your own more complex and elaborate integrations, you can do so using the RSpace application programming interface.
Rob, I think this was a question just specifically about integrating with Dataverse. Maybe you want to focus on that? That was the question.
It was just for Dataverse, very simple. We enable it through the system administration portal to allow it to be used. And then under the apps area, you'll enter some very simple information about the type of Dataverse that you actually use, the name of the server, the name of the specific Dataverse, and an API key that's provided by Dataverse itself and within their application. And then that's really it. After that, you're ready to immediately start sending things to Dataverse directly through the export function of RSpace.
Dataverse installation and ready using it?
I'm sorry, say again?
If is there Dataverse installation that is really integrated already?
Yeah, like Harvard, for example, it was actually integrated with several Dataverses. Actually, for example, in fact, other people that I've met through the Dataverse community meetings, and including the university UIT in Norway. It's integrated with their Dataverse, and there are a couple of others as well. So we have a new one, I think, at the University of Liège in Belgium. So there's more and more all the time. So in fact, yes, the answer is yes, multiple integrate. Another one is University of Göttingen in Germany. So yes, there are quite a few cases where there are actual integrations between RSpace and institutional Dataverses. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
And we'd be happy to, if Sonia, if you think it's useful, I'm just thinking we could, maybe it would be useful, we should put together, instead of just casually trying to figure out who's involved, we could even put together a list of people who do have the integration set up. And then if Miguel or others wanted to reach out to them to understand more about how they're using it, that would be a resource that we could make available as part of this kind of
That's
learning
always,
process.
yeah, that's always helpful for them to see the good, the
Yes.
examples of people that are using it.
Yeah, we are really need that now because we're starting a project from the government to do this. I mean, the data management plan to be integrated with a repository, and we need to show them that it's possible to do that. So I guess there are people here that are going to be very interested in that.
Fantastic. And so I'll work with Sonia, and we'll also put together a list of, well, I think in terms of that, Julie is great because, as you see, at Harvard, they've actually got all three. So in that particular data management plan issue, if Julie's willing, I would encourage you to reach out to her. In terms of the R-Space Dataverse, I'll work with Sonia, and we'll put together a list of the other institutions that already have it, and also the relevant people. And then I'm sure they would be happy to speak with you about that as well.
Thank you. Great.
Yeah, their examples of how they're using it is always important for them to see, what they can do with it. So wonderful. Thank you so much for coming.
Yes. Thank you.
Really appreciate having you guys on here today.
Yeah,
Thank you for asking us.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Next
Thank
time
you.
we might meet in Brazil, so don't be surprised.
Yes, please. Next time you come to Brazil.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
When do we leave? We spent 2 years indoors. I'm ready to go do a little bit more traveling.
Sure. Next year, I'm not sure for next year.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
All right,
thanks.
everyone. Well,
Thanks.
thank you very much for attending. Miguel, I will let you do the closing remarks because we have another webinar
Oh,
planned
yes.
in April and in May, with slightly different community of attendees, but everybody here, of course, is welcome to attend as well. But maybe you would like to do the
Yes.
closing remarks
Well,
for your
okay.
group.
No, I just want to say thank you to you and to Dwayne for helping us. And para los amigos aqui no Brasil, dizer que todo esse material que foi disponibilizado hoje vai ser disponibilizado para os participantes. Queremos que vocês também se sintam à vontade para perguntar. Vocês conhecem a Sônia é muito receptiva, adora o Brasil. Então, qualquer convite para ela, eu acho que ela vai aceitar. Então, estamos aqui para isso. Os próximos 2 webinários já tem também uma programação, vamos enviar para vocês e esperamos que nos enviem suas perguntas para que a gente possa continuar também formando os webinários. Esse webinar, realmente tivemos a sorte de ter a Rory, a Rônia e saber que eles têm essa disponibilidade também para nos ajudar na parte de ferramentas de integração. Então, muito obrigado a todos e se não tivermos mais alguma outra coisa, estamos aqui para servir vocês. Um abraço a todos. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Dwayne.
Thank you as always. Always a pleasure.
Okay, everybody saying bye.
Yeah,
bye-bye.
bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
It's good to see you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Rory. Bye, Rob.
Bye-bye, Sonia.
Bye,
Bye, Miguel.
Sonia. I see you later. Thank you.
Thanks,
I'll talk
Dwayne,
to you
for
later,
setting up the
Sonia.
webinar.
Thanks, Dwayne. Okay.
Thank you, Roy. Okay.
So, again, we will continue to add to our list of things that come up during these webinars for the next webinar.
Sorry.
Try to schedule, 3 really great sessions a year.
Yes.
And catch
Thank you very
everybody up
much.
to,
Yes.
one of the purposes is to make sure that everybody's up to date. The installation managers are up to date on the new tools. And get everybody's installation up to date on the version of the installation they're using, because that's so important.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Bye,
Thank you.
Marcelo, and everyone else, Louise and Maria.
Okay. Take care, Sonia.
Bye,
Thank you.
Miguel.
Okay.
Bye,
Bye-bye,
Rory.
Sonia. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hasta luego.
Please do keep in touch. I look forward to hearing from some of you guys on the stuff we talked about in the worksheet and the spreadsheet.
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to be remembering. Okay.
Yeah.
About that.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.